Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 193 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield.
And I'm Matt Kyle.
And you have just found the most informative gaming podcast in the world.
In the world.
In the world. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I mostly did. I had a blast on Thanksgiving, but then I paid for it for the next 2 days.
Huh.
I drank too much. I felt terrible. I can't do it anymore. I think part of the problem is I just don't drink. Mm-hmm. I started thinking back. I had not drank before Thanksgiving for 2 months, and then before that, 2 more months at a fantasy draft. So I've drank 3 times in the last 4 months, and I think my tolerance is not what it used to be.
Yeah,
I paid for it.
I didn't drink anything, although I did have 2 dinners on Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's great.
So.
It was awesome. I had a great day, great people, great food, great fun. I hope you guys all say the same. I do want to say that I am very, very thankful for each and every one of you guys, all our patrons, people who watch on YouTube, however you get to us. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Every little thing that you do helps. Just watching on YouTube helps. That's another view on our YouTube channel that helps it reach other people. So we're very, very thankful for you guys. Without you, none of this is possible. So thank you.
And on Saturday, we actually had a big movie night, and we watched the Star Wars trilogy.
Which one?
The original.
The original.
What else do you mean? When
Yeah,
you say
I know.
I would have said the prequel trilogy. We already did that. But it was the original despecialized 4K scans of original 35 millimeter, like exactly how they were in theaters. No additions, no CG.
Wow,
so it was a good time.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I hadn't watched those movies. Actually, sat down and watched those movies in 12 years.
I don't know how long it's been for me, Matt. You know what? they come on television sometimes.
Yeah, I've seen snippets and stuff. And
I'll start in the middle and I'll end up watching the whole thing again for I don't even know how many times.
I can still. It's funny. We were watching Return of the Jedi, and I'm like, I don't remember the last time I really sat down and watched this whole movie. Maybe when it came out on DVD in 2004.
That might be me too, actually. Yeah.
I can still recite the whole thing. It's so weird. I could if you needed if the world hung in the balance on someone standing up and performing the Emperor Palpatine part from Return of the Jedi, I could just throw the robe on and do it right now. It's so ingrained in my brain.
Well, the thing too for me was that when I was working at MTV, Spike, Game Trailers, etc., Spike had the rights to Star Wars.
I remember that.
And so in our office, we had 50 TVs. And so Star Wars was just on those TVs.
3 separate times.
I mean, literally, they just stripped it over. Mm-hmm. They paid so much for it.
I remember that. They'd run it Thanksgiving and 4th of July. And
it was a horrible deal for Spike because they gave up so much money for it and nobody watched. Because there's only a handful of films when you're running them over and over.
Well, also, nobody wants to watch those movies with commercials.
Yeah. Yeah, and why would you? Because everybody has them 20 times over on VHS, DVD, whatever. Yeah, it's crazy. A couple notes before we get started. One, this was the slowest week of the year for games. It is just barren.
Not a whole lot happened. I played, although we did get a super secret, out of nowhere No Man's Sky update.
Yeah. I
played that mostly. That was what I did.
Yeah.
The little time I've spent playing games was spent playing No Man's Sky.
Yeah, your boy Shane worked hard to get this episode together, so I hope you guys enjoy it. We have a lot of topics, but I don't think too many of them are going to last all that long. So I have a feeling that we're probably not going to hit our 3-hour mark today. It might come in a little shorter. Another thing, next week, it appears that if Matt can do it, GameFace might be shifted to a different day. Both our TriCaster TDs cannot do Tuesday. So we might be looking at a different day next week. Keep an eye on our Twitter, at Sifted Games on Twitter, and we'll let you know there. Also, there's a thread in the forums on Sifted where I update on what's happening with GameFace anytime I have any updates. So find that thread. It's almost always at the top and pinned, and you can follow it. And then you'll get an alert every time I update, letting you know when GameFace is going to happen. So we'll figure it out. We'll communicate. We'll let you guys know. Also, 2 episodes left for the year at this point. So next week will be probably a regular episode, and the one after that we'll be doing our Game of the Year awards. Over the Thanksgiving holiday, we put up our top 10 gaming turkeys for 2019. Check that out. Wanted to cleanse ourselves of the awful stuff before we celebrated the good stuff, and there's a lot to celebrate in 2019. So I think that's it. A bunch of you guys right out of the gate here hooked us the F up. Johnny Hurricane, thank you. You gave us a mega cheer. I'm not even sure what that is, but that's awesome. Thank you. P-Tor, subscribe with Twitch Prime. Thank you. Petor shared some cheers. Thank you. Emperor Dread. This is great. Awesome. Tomb Raiders 11. Thank you. Danboy90. Thank you. Axel F 1986. Thank you. All you guys subscribing via Twitch Prime. This is very important to us, people.
Flood.
Oh, now here comes a bunch more. Awesome. Let's see. Slagathor, Holchazar. Who else we got here?
Mega cheer from Slagathor.
Yeah, thank you guys. This is freaking awesome. I do want to reiterate that our Amazon Prime revenue is very, very important to us for our bottom line. It's not a bonus, like we need it. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. Anybody on YouTube who watches the show, the 1,000+ people, if even 30% of you guys subscribe via Twitch Prime for us, it would literally like change our business. I know it seems crazy because you see all these other Patreons that they're getting like $80,000 a month or whatever the heck they're at this point. Those $2.50 actually matter to us. So if you're tired of throwing your money into this bottomless pit and nobody recognizes you for it, here we are. We would really, really appreciate it. All right, let's get on with the show. We're going to kick things off with probably the biggest thing that happened over the last 4 days related to gaming. And I know this is crazy.
And Stars member BR. Subscribe.
Thank you, Stars member BR. You're awesome, man.
He's a member of Stars.
Stars. We appreciate it, man. It makes a difference for us. Sadly, probably the biggest story of the last week in gaming was Black Friday. And Black Friday sales, Cyber Monday sales. For me, I wouldn't say, the last few years, this has definitely lost some luster, I think.
Part of it because you have everything
that
you want, I think, in terms of game stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like
if you weren't keeping up with like current releases, there was a lot of good deals.
Look, I was curating for Sifted a lot over the last week, and I was curating probably 30% of everything we've curated per day over the last 6 days has been deals. So we were trying to hook you guys up, but honestly, there just weren't that many amazing deals.
Well, part of it is that there were no really good Switch anything.
Like, it was the same deal as last year, the Mario Kart 8
and like the games
bundle.
didn't really drop. But like PlayStation 4, I was getting stuff to like fill in holes in my casual friends' like collections, and like just about anything first party important was $9 at Best Buy and Target. Like I got to stack this tall of like. God of War, Spider-Man, like the most important stuff of the last couple of years. Like if anyone I know who didn't have them, I just got those.
Oh, that was a good idea. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure part of the problem now is like people are just buying like PSN credit.
Yeah.
Because like people
they're buying digitally.
They want to buy digital. And of course everybody's going online. Like I got all these deals online and then picked them up physically at the West Hollywood store. Like I didn't go to a store on.
See that woman put her wig back on.
Yeah. Like, I didn't go to a store and buy it.
Jared, go back. Rewind that clip. Just like 10 seconds. The woman gets trampled. She's laying on the ground. There she is. Now watch her. She puts her wig back on.
Well, you gotta get back on the horse.
Oh my gosh!
But like this didn't really. This doesn't seem like it happened.
If you're just listening to GameFace, you're really missing out. We try hard to really get good B-roll for you guys for all our segments.
And when is this footage from?
So that's another one of my points. So I was going. I knew we were going to talk about this.
Imagine being that rabid about Old Navy.
I know.
Like that. These people need fleeces, and they need them now.
They needed them yesterday. But that's my point. So I knew we were going to talk about this. I was trying to find B-roll for the discussion from this year to get like Black Friday stampedes from. There are none. Like if you go on YouTube and you look at the usual YouTubers who cover this stuff, they're like crazy Black Friday, blah, blah, blah. And then you watch the video and it's them standing in an empty store with a dude sorting through a pile of socks behind him. Like, this stuff doesn't really happen anymore. Like I saw
the stores
others
have figured it out. People have figured it out. Things are open. Like, they started like being open at like 5:30 Thanksgiving night, and they're open literally all night. Like, I mean, even like back, it was a few years ago when I got that Wii U. I went to Target at 1:30 in the morning. There's nobody there. I just pulled it off the shelf, walked up, bought it, went home, and it was broken, so I had to bring it back in the morning. But like, It was fine. Like it was this kind of thing only happens in very specific locations, and it doesn't happen as much anymore because like the stores have mostly figured out how to order things online. Just go pick them up at the store whenever you want. Like you don't need to do this anymore.
This is insane. This montage is insane.
And also, a lot of people have wised up to things like, like the doorbuster TVs used to be a big deal.
Right.
But
They'd run for them.
But people have wised up that those are all garbage.
They're like the worst TVs. Yeah.
Some of them are specifically made on the cheap for Black
Friday.
So never buy a $200 4K TV.
And they're made out of the cheapest components that really only have to last a year.
And there were some good deals, like the LG, what was it, the LG C9, I think, which is one of the best gaming televisions around, big 4K OLED thing, was $1,700.
I saw
That's
one.
That's a $4,000 television.
Yeah, I did see another 65-inch OLED for like $1,450. Yeah, it was originally like $2,500.
Like if you're in the market for like an LG 65-inch OLED, like there was some. I mean, it's not cheap. I mean, obviously, $1,500 is not a small amount of money.
Yeah,
but like compared to what like full retail is, even now, like those were crazy deals. I have an LG B7, and it is the greatest thing.
It's stunning.
It's amazing.
Yeah, like, it's a great TV.
So like, there were some good deals. It's just it wasn't like the thing you have in your head when you imagine a crazy Black Friday deal. It's like, oh no, that's a really good price. It's like over half off.
Yeah.
For this thing, it's still going to cost me like
a lot of money,
a week's salary or more.
It was kind of the same thing with laptops and desktops. Like there were some decent deals, but still, you're got to plunk down a big chunk of change.
There are a couple deals. I mean, the PlayStation Pro deal was good.
That was the amazing deal. I hope all you guys got that if you needed a PS4.
There was a solid Xbox One X deal at Target for the Jedi Fallen Order bundle. Like it was all right.
It was bad. I thought it was bad compared to prior years. You're right. That PS4, first it was a PS4 Slim deal, then it was switched to PS4 Pro in a couple days. That deal was amazing. $300 for like 6 games and a PS4 Pro. That's insane.
Yeah, it's just that like stores don't do in the store only deals anymore because they know they'll get more sales by putting them online.
Yeah, and they probably want to avoid this crap that we're watching right now.
I mean, Cyber Monday, once that took off, it was only a matter of time before that killed Black Friday in terms of people actually camping out. I mean, you still get like people camping out, but like you always notice now that like the shots of like, oh, the line is already here. It's like 5 chairs. Yeah. No one's even there. They're just in their cars.
There are people who absolutely have to get that one thing, and they're willing to be the only people sitting there to make sure that they get it.
Or they want to be on the news.
Right. It was funny, though. I saw a news report where this woman this year was inside a Target before they opened the doors, and she's standing there hyping it up, and the manager is there getting ready to open the door, and she's like, here we go. The stampede is about to happen. And the woman opens the door, and there's nobody there. Nobody comes in the door. So it has changed a lot. I do feel like the deals have got worse over time. I feel like product manufacturers have kind of reached a point where they're like, you know what, we can't do that anymore, where we're just giving stuff away. Because what's the payoff, really? If you have a lot of stock you need to get rid of, I get it.
I was amused to see how many games suddenly were back on the shelves at places like Best Buy that have been gone. I mean, the Kingdom Hearts collection has not been at a Best Buy in months and months, and suddenly they had stacks and stacks. Like you could tell they were clearing out inventory.
Yeah, the publishers are like, "Hey, we'll give you these for $5. Want to sell them during Black Friday? Sure."
Well, they've just been sitting in distribution warehouses and like
collecting dust, and they're like, "Well, let's just mark these all the way down and see how many of them we can sell."
I mean, that was a good for the most of the week. I think it was $19 for the Kingdom Hearts story so far, which is everything but 3 like in one bundle. And then I think Friday or Saturday it was $15 at Best Buy, which is like that's $15 for like 300 hours.
It's insane.
I mean, like
that's a good deal.
You could pay $15 for that and not play anything else till next Black Friday, and you'd still probably not be done with Kingdom Hearts yet.
Yeah, I think maybe to kind of sum it up in a sentence is I felt like our work this year on curating Black Friday deals on Sifted was more important than ever because it's hard to go out and find that stuff. That's my other problem.
I mean, I found that because I saw that PS4 Pro deal. That was the first time I saw it was on Sifted.
Yeah, I mean, I made a conscious effort to do it because I could see. I went to Amazon myself to see if I wanted to buy anything. It's so hard to find the crap that you want. Like it's not well organized. So you're looking for something and you end up on this page that has like 8,000 things you don't want. And then because anybody can sell anything on Amazon, a lot of times when you search for stuff on Amazon, you get this first result that isn't what you're looking for, and there's like 50 pages of it. Because what happens is there's so many people now who are trying to get rich quick on Amazon by going to China and getting a product and getting it manufactured and then selling it on Amazon. So, like iPhone cases. Have you ever Googled or have you ever searched for iPhone cases on Amazon?
No.
It's insane. So if you just search for like iPhone, like it ends up, all the cases end up popping up, and you have to go through like 6 pages to get to what you want. So anyway, Black Friday shopping has become more of a pain in the ass. So we tried to step up for you guys this year and help you guys in any way that we could. And also, in all honesty, the deals just aren't as great as they used to be. So,
well,
where do you think it's headed?
On Steam.
Yeah, you're right. Where do you think it's headed? Do you think it's just going to keep going in this direction? Everyone's just going to sit at home and shop?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I'll miss the laughs that we get from watching these videos, but otherwise.
But there's fewer injuries, fewer crazy shit, fewer employees that have to be put to work on a holiday.
Yep.
Like, there's no downside to it, really,
there isn't.
Unless you're a news reporter.
Yeah, I just wish the retail sites would do a better job of organizing their sales so you can actually find what you want without having to wade through a sea of worthless crap.
But at the same time, I feel like between stuff like Sifted and Cheap Ass Gamer and Wario 64, like there's people that do that, and do a good job of it.
It's true.
So it gets there, and also like sometimes the really good deals happen like fast, like There were some good lightning deals on Amazon, but they lasted like 15 minutes.
Yeah, like I don't have the time of my life for that.
Yeah,
like,
but you just don't know. Like, so I woke up, I think, Friday morning or Saturday morning, and I had a text from someone saying like, lightning deal on the Lego Millennium Falcon, like, which is the huge crazy thing, and it was on lightning deal at like 9 a.m. for $400.
How much does it normally retail for?
$800.
Okay,
so it's
basically
deal. Half off. And Lego doesn't go on sale.
Yeah, why would it?
And I was like, cool, it's gone now. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have bought, because I already have I have the old giant Lego Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. From the old school days.
From like 2005 or so, which I think you can sell now still for like $2,000.
I bet. Yeah.
But I couldn't, because that's one side of the box is all torn up by the cat. It's the one thing my old cat ever destroyed.
Wow.
Like I didn't even know that she used to sleep behind. She'd go in the closet and sleep behind the Lego boxes, and it wasn't until years and years later when I was moving, actually, after months after she died, I pulled it out, and there's all this scratching all along the back. I'm like, she never ruined a single thing except the most valuable Lego item I own.
Same thing happened to me.
But now I keep it because I'm like, she scratched it. So I keep that.
Yeah, my cat died, and like 2 years later, I was like cleaning out my closet, and I found this area that she had like created for herself that I knew nothing about. That was like, she had like pushed all this stuff to the side and created like a little hole for her to sleep in, and it was literally caked with cat hair, like a 1/4 inch thick. Like, I didn't even know it existed. I was like, oh my God.
You found the nest.
You had this little nest, this oasis where you could get away from our crazy human beings for a while. But I hope that you guys think I'm crazy, and you guys got great deals on Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
I don't think the deals were great on games, but also like part of the thing is like there's great deals on games all year now.
That's right.
Like, it's not. Part of the reason is it's not as impressive is because we see those deals regularly anyway. It's not like a once a year thing anymore.
We're actually going to talk about a game in a little bit that I was quite discouraged to find its value had hit rock bottom when I tried to like sell it back. But we'll get to that in a bit. So anyway, that's Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Hopefully you guys were lucky and got some good deals. Hopefully Sifted helped you guys. I hope it did. Hope, we help you guys save money. We're always curating deals on Sifted. We're not quite to Wario 64 level, who seems to have made it his mission in life to deliver video game deals.
That dude is plugged in a way that I can't even, I think he's a cyborg now.
Well, the crazy thing was Wario actually worked with us for quite a while when we first launched. And one of the reasons why was because, one, he knows everything that's going on. Like, I think on NeoGAF one time, someone drew a cartoon of him, and it was like an octopus sitting with like 8 computer screens with like 8 arms going out on the computers. Like, that was him. Or it probably still is him. And he worked for us for a long time. And what I was surprised about was when he was curating with us, he never really curated deals.
Yeah.
And I was like emailing him, like,
that's for his Twitter.
Yeah. I'm like, yo, this is like your area of expertise. He'd be like, oh, okay. And I think you're right. Like, I think he was like, if I do that here, then my Twitter, there's value in having a Twitter like his. Having that many followers, like, there's value in it. So I get it. But yeah, it was interesting nevertheless. So anyway, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Metroid. One of my favorite, maybe I don't know. It's close to my favorite Nintendo franchise.
Definitely my favorite Nintendo.
I think
franchise.
Zelda might trump it.
There was a
bit.
time when I would say Zelda was higher, but not anymore.
Yeah.
Metroid has a much higher batting average with me.
I think in general.
Granted, there's far fewer of them.
Yeah, it helps.
There's only one Metroid game I dislike. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And there's a couple
lot more
Zeldas,
Zelda games I dislike.
Yeah. So anyway, it leaked out this week that Nintendo is developing not just one Metroid game, which we already know about, which is Metroid Prime 4, but 2 other Metroid games.
And I think we know what one of the other ones is.
People are speculating it's going to be the Prime Trilogy.
The Trilogy remaster, which has been so widely talked about that I feel like there's too much smoke for there not to be fire.
Or do you think it's one of those cases where people just talked about it so much that it just manifested itself?
No,
like Nintendo was listening.
I think
I
think it's too much of a no-brainer, especially because it was also on the Wii U.
And it also isn't that worth? I mean, maybe not for much longer, but isn't that trilogy on worth a lot of money now?
Not. I mean, it used to be like on Wii, like the metal, the steel
the
box
metal case,
ones.
yeah.
Like used to be worth a lot. I think once it got released digitally on Wii U, it dropped a bit.
Okay.
Similar to how Xenoblade used to be worth a lot, and after it came out on 3DS and backwards compatible on Wii U, it was not so much anymore.
Yeah.
But I think it is still up there. I mean, I think you're probably, if you want a sealed copy of the Wii version on eBay, you're probably still paying over $100.
Okay, so yeah, it's come down a good bit then. I think the last time I checked, it was like $250.
Yeah,
or
it used to be one of the most valuable Wii games.
Yeah, I have it, but I should have sold it when it was worth something still. So everyone's kind of assuming that we're going to get yet another release for a Metroid Prime trilogy. I'm okay with that. There's a whole generation of players who didn't play it back when it came out. Or
I'd like to play it again, and I don't want to drag the GameCube back out, and I'd be interested to play a Metroid Prime 3 with better image quality.
Yeah.
The Wii's output is not great.
It was terrible.
It's much worse than the GameCube through a progressive scan.
Oh, way worse.
Cable.
I mean, they're basically the same hardware.
Roughly, but
that's why GameCube.
But the image processing just isn't as good as the GameCube. To save money.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just saying it's the same flipper and CPU and GPU and all that. So we kind of think we know what the first 2 Metroid games are. Do you want to venture to guess what the third one might be?
I mean, my guess the third one would be another 2D game by Mercury Steam.
You think?
Yeah. Well, Metroid 2, what was it? Samus Returns did very well. So I wouldn't surprise me if they gave them another shot at maybe a direct sequel to Metroid, Super Metroid.
What do you think about just a remake of Super Metroid?
You're not going to improve on Super Metroid.
I mean, it's pretty much perfect as it is. But, I mean, you can just get it out there in the market again and make more money off it.
Yeah, but I mean, there's room to do a mid-cool there between Super and Fusion, even though Fusion does list itself as Metroid 4.
Right.
But... and Super Metroid lists itself as Metroid 3 at the beginning, but you could do a 3.5 in there. I'm sure some stuff happened between Super Metroid and... Although there's also, is Prime canon? There's debate...
What is that? What does the debate say about that?
Well, Nintendo... Sakurai, or what's his name? Who makes that? Sakamoto? Is that his name?
Makes what?
Metroid. Who's the guy in charge of Metroid?
I honestly don't know.
He was...
oh, you mean the guy, Tanaba, maybe? The guy who ended up moving to Texas to work with Retro.
No, he's the guy who wrote the manga. He's the one who basically brought in Other M story that
Ooh, that's encouraging.
Other M's... I mean, he worked on all of them, but Other M's story was basically... Her characterization is taken basically directly from the terrible manga he wrote. And was only in Japan for reasons that should be pretty obvious if you played Other M. I mean, I guess Other M is technically between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, but maybe we could just decanonize that or something because it was god-awful. But Prime, because of Other M, the Prime games were said to be non-canon.
Oh.
At the time Other M was coming out.
I wasn't aware of that.
Which a lot of people had trouble with. And part of this may have been to address the complaint, when Ridley shows up in Other M, she basically shits her pants and screams and everything, which is not very Samus.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense within the context.
Well, especially in the sense, at this point, she's fought and thought she killed Ridley 5 times in the. But if you remove the Prime game, she's only fought him once.
Yeah. Okay.
Or twice, maybe. And so I guess that's a little more, but still.
Hint. Yeah.
You've already killed him twice. Who cares? Okay, he's back again. Just shoot him again. It just doesn't seem. It's so bad. That's the one Metroid game I obviously don't like. Even though I like the look of it, like I think it looks nice. I wish it was good, but it is not.
That was kind of the first time Nintendo really teamed up with Team Ninja, right? I mean, now they're like best bros, and Team Ninja makes a ton of games.
Was that before Razor's Edge or Ninja Gaiden 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was a Wii U game.
Yeah.
So that was their first. Yeah, because everyone was shocked that they were teamed up with Team Ninja for this.
It sounded like a great idea.
Oh
at
yeah, it
first.
should have been.
It didn't work out so well.
But like it's the story's terrible. The characterization of Samus is just horrifying. And then like the actual game is not very good in the sense that like
they had those goofy like motion controls where you'd like flip.
Motion controls were weird. Like flicking to shoot to aim for the rockets is weird, and to dodge when you're doing that. But also on top of that, like I find the level design very non-Metroid. I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say lazy, but like the fact that you have all your upgrades already and you're just waiting for Queen Adam to tell you that it's okay to use your life-saving technology, like means that you don't have to find any of the stuff anymore, which means there's no exploration to find. Like you're cutting out half of what makes Metroid. And then you got those sections where you have to hunt the pixel on the static screen with the fucking Wiimote. Like what a terrible goddamn game.
Full of bad ideas. That's
tons of bad ideas. Just not a good move anywhere in there. Other than I like the look of it. Like I like the visual style of it. But that's about it.
Yep. But isn't Nintendo... I mean, it seems like Nintendo's MO right now is to do a remake.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think you want to touch that, especially since you...
Not Other M. I'm talking about Super Metroid.
Yeah, I mean Super Metroid. Okay. Like, there's no reason to do that to Super Metroid, especially since you've already got Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo service of the online thing, which I might add has not been updated since they put it up in October.
I know.
I mean, I know they said no more monthly updates, but Jesus, people, come on.
Yeah,
people are paying $20 a year for that. I know it's not a ton of money, but like it's a service.
You're still paying for it.
There hasn't even been any new NES games.
Yeah, Nintendo's sliding by thinking, oh, people can play online. That's good enough for $20. I mean, that's basically what's happening. It's just saying for $20, that's pretty much all you're getting. And I guess if you look at the price of the other services, it kind of makes sense.
Oh, sure. But I'm not paying $20 a year to play online.
You don't play online on Switch.
I'm paying $20 a year to get Super Nintendo games.
Yeah.
And they are not delivering so far.
Yeah.
That was a really good first batch.
Yep.
But keep it up. But I think like you've got Super Metroid on there, and that's more than enough.
But why do you remake anything? If you don't want to remake Super Metroid, why remake anything? Yeah, I mean, your reasoning...
You remake Metroid 2 because Metroid 2 is unplayable now. Super Metroid, I think, is entirely playable now.
Yeah. You mean playable as in, like, it's easy to just be able to play it, or it's still fun to play?
It's still fun to play.
Okay.
Like, go back to the original Game Boy Metroid 2, it's rough. Like, there's a reason there was the fan remake, too. It's just, you want to bring that game up to Super Metroid standards, basically. Whereas Super Metroid, I think, even if you've never played a Super Metroid before, and you pick it up in 2019, you're still going to have fun playing. Like, I mean...
Link to the Past, though, is still a good game as a handheld game.
Oh, yeah. But Link to the Past wasn't a handheld
sorry, Link's
game.
Awakening, sorry.
I mean, yeah, but also keep in mind that Link's Awakening is not easily available on the Switch otherwise.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's why I was asking you whether you were talking about access or actual...
It's a little bit of both in this case.
Yeah.
But I think you've already got Super Metroid available on there and charging money for it, technically, so I don't see the bit.
What if they made a 3D version of Super Metroid that's kind of like Prime?
That's never...
That's a lot of work.
I mean, you could do it, but it's just
like
the appeal of Super Metroid is so much in the snappiness of the 2D controls that I just don't. I don't see what you gain from that. You might as well just make a new game, and they are making a new game. It's called Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah.
So like I think your best bet here is Metroid Prime 4, Metroid Prime Trilogy remaster on bundle night whatever. That better come with a good amiibo.
Yeah.
And a new 2D. Like Metroid by Harmony Gold. What the hell am I thinking? Mercury Steam.
Harmony Gold.
Harmony Gold. What the? Got Robotech on the brain over here. I don't know where the hell that came from. It's because Mercury Steam and Harmony Gold are slightly...
it kind of makes sense, yeah. Do you think we're going to see Metroid Prime 4 next year?
No.
No. Still no.
No.
I mean, look...
I think they'll show it to us, but I don't think it's going to come out next year, no.
Does it shock you that the Switch is, basically 3 years old now? Doesn't it seem like it's flown by?
Yeah. I mean, it's got a lot. I mean, it's not. The change is the difference. I think is 3 years, and then you look at what's come out for it from Nintendo, you're like, yeah, that's about 3 years worth of output. I mean, I feel like they have a healthy amount of things have come out for it.
But you got to remember, usually by now,
especially because
Nintendo's already bailed on its console.
And also, we're so used to waiting so long. I didn't realize. So I was digging through like older games just because everybody's doing their decade picks now.
Yeah.
And I was looking at one guy's list who his pick for Game of the Year for 2013 was Saints Row 4, which to me was I'm like, did nothing else come out in 2013? So I looked it up, and just a lot of other better things.
I'm sure, yeah.
But just in the cursory look of that, I saw that's when Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon came out.
Oh.
And I'm like, was that long ago?
Yeah.
Like, you used to wait 6 years between sequels for these things? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it depends on the franchise. But yeah, for some of them,
now
Nintendo
they're getting,
puts them on
I
ice.
think we will see Breath of the Wild 2 or whatever they call that next year.
You think we'll see that before Metroid Prime 4?
I do, because I think they started over on Metroid Prime.
They did.
When they switched to Retro.
I mean, they did, yeah. I mean, Retro says that they started from scratch. And that was only, about 18 months ago? Yeah. Around there?
Yeah.
Not that long ago. So you're right. I mean, I just wonder if Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a Switch 2 game.
Maybe. Like, it's not impossible. I mean, I think it'll still be on this, but I think there'll be crossover. I think everything moving forward will be taking your library with you and Mac backwards compatible, yada, yada, yada.
I mean, Breath of the Wild 2, to me, could come any day now. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to realize they've been working on it for 3 years now. So,
well, a little less than that because they had to do the DLC. But
right.
They basically said we finished the first DLC and decided we'd rather use all our other ideas that were going to be DLC for a new game
for the sequel.
Sequel. So so that's basically, you're probably looking at like they started somewhere around October, November 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I would say next holiday, pretty much a guarantee.
No, to October, November 2017.
Yeah.
That is 2 years ago.
That's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you said 3 years, and I'm like thinking about March is 3 years.
Yeah. They already had the engine and everything. I'm thinking next holiday
I think next holiday is probably the next Zelda.
Yeah.
And 2 Zeldas on a system is a good set. It's a good
the
pacing.
The Wii had 2.
All the good systems had 2.
Yeah.
N64 had 2.
But
Super Nintendo didn't have 2, but that's okay.
But the crazy part is you look back across the last several generations for Nintendo, this is the point where they just ghost. Mm-hmm. This is where we stop seeing first-party software output. This is where the third parties start to bail. Even with the Wii, which sold, 150 million units? Even with the Wii, Nintendo, and it's by its third year,
but
because
the software wasn't selling.
Right, yeah.
Like now they've got software sales, they've got unit sales, like they got
it's
system
great
sales.
to see this new Nintendo, for sure.
Like I'm surprised. I don't know if there's anyone left of the company that remembers that other than Miyamoto.
Yeah, it could be true. So there you go, 3 Metroids coming.
Like Miyamoto's just sitting there, like holding court in like the cafeteria. It's like, this is what it was like, children.
Yeah.
Back when we ruled it all.
I will say one thing about Nintendo, though. I mean, most of those people stick around.
Oh yeah.
Like these other platform holders, it's just constant movement. Like I'm pretty impressed that Phil Spencer has stayed at Xbox for as long as he has. But for the most part, I mean, look at Sony. The turnover at that top at Sony, like. That doesn't happen at Nintendo.
I'm mildly surprised that Reggie left.
Yeah. Nintendo Japan in particular, I mean, those people are lifers. Like, once they get in there, they're there until they retire or something else happens.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that's also much more common in Japan.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Not so
I'm
much
sure.
here.
I'm sure all the people we saw sleeping under their desks at Polyphony years and years ago are still sleeping under their desks.
They probably are. Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. 3
working
Metroids.
on their second game.
Yeah, it sounds like next year is going to be like the year of Metroid. Do you think it would be weird to put out the trilogy and then the other game and not follow it up with Prime 4 in a kind of a immediate amount of time?
I mean, I think Prime 4 is probably 2021.
Early 2021, you think?
Maybe.
Like
I don't
March-ish?
know. I don't really have a guess on that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to even gauge.
But I think 2021 is a pretty safe bet.
Yep.
Just because of how they've had to start over. And also we know for certain that Nintendo does tend to nitpick retro stuff pretty hard. So
That's good, though.
There might be some revisions happening. So we'll see.
Yep.
But I think we will see Metroid Prime 4 shown for the first time next year.
We have to.
But I don't think we will see it released next year.
Yeah, I think we'll see the first in-game footage at E3 next year.
We'll get like the trilogy remaster next year or something.
Yep. So there you go, if you're a Metroid fan.
Or Trilogy Remaster early 2021 and Metroid Prime 4 that fall.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But it is also about time for Mercury Steam to have a new game ready.
I mean, you're right. It hasn't done anything really
So
for a while.
if that's what they're working on, we might get that next year.
That's a good spot on your part, actually picking up on that. You're right. They haven't done anything for a while. They had that free-to-play game that they worked on for a while, and it tanked.
But their last major project was Metroid, and that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. So there you go. If you're a Metroid fan, good days are a-coming. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about spoilers. Something happened this week that, to the best of my recollection, I do not remember ever happening. And that is there's a commercial for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order making the rounds right now that has a huge endgame spoiler. How do you feel about that, Matt?
Well, I don't really think it's much of a spoiler.
Yeah.
Like a character appearing in something is not much of a spoiler to me. The bigger spoiler to me, I thought, was Baby Yoda in The Mandalorian, which was being posted everywhere on Twitter and other social media the day after that show went live.
Oh, the minute the show went live.
And no one complained.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't care about
But it's
spoilers.
so cute.
I don't care about spoilers, really. Like, if a story can be spoiled by knowing basic plot elements, it was not a very good story.
Do you think Baby Yoda, though? How about that? I mean, that's pretty big.
Well, here's the thing. Baby Yoda is more of the premise than I mean, it's a spoiler for the first episode.
Yeah.
Like, it's a nice surprise, and I appreciate that Lucasfilm kept that under wraps as tight as it was.
So you would be pissed, though, if you found out about that before you watched it?
No.
No.
As a matter of fact, I did find out about it before I watched it.
Okay.
But I was like, oh, that's really neat. Like, the fact that they're I mean, Lucas didn't want to touch Yoda's race ever. Like, we don't even know what the name of the race is. Like, we have no idea what his species is called. Only George Lucas knows.
I mean, you never see anyone else from his race. Wait, do you?
In episode 1.
Really?
There's a female Yoda species on the Jedi Council named Yaddle.
I don't remember that.
Well, she's only in the background of a few shots.
Oh, okay.
But she is there. Like, there are other members of the species. Okay. They're around there. They're very strong with the Force. There was a rumor, fan rumor, fan wank, fanfic through the years that that he was a Will, Whill. The original scripts of Star Wars are said to be taken from the Journal of the Wills.
Okay.
As they were like the chronicles of the history of the Force, basically. And there was a fan theory that Yoda was a Will. That's what those were.
Like a scholar, basically.
And then in Rogue One, Chirrut and Baz, the monks, the monk guys, they are guardians of the Wills.
Oh.
They say that. When they said that in the theater, I lost my damn mind. I was like, deep cut.
Yeah.
I really feel like Gary Whitta had to be responsible for that. A lot of his stuff got rewritten in that movie, but I feel like he had to be the one that brought Wills into the fucking story. But because he is that kind of Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, he has the perfect job.
And so, yeah, that was a thing. But, like, obviously we don't know anything about what this is going to turn out to be or why they're bringing this child into the story of Mandalorian or whatever. Like, right now it's just there to do kind of the lone wolf and cub thing and look incredibly adorable.
Yeah. And it's succeeding.
Yeah. And also, here's another good thing. Werner Herzog, again, cannot believe he is in a Star Wars thing, basically playing Werner Herzog. Like, he's basically Werner Herzog in Star Wars. Like, there's no character here, it's just him.
Yeah.
Which, if you're a film nerd, like, it's very funny just to see him doing that. But they were talking about on set, like, we're going to shoot, empty plates so we can replace Baby Yoda with CG if we need to. And he was like, you are cowards. Like, you have to use the puppet. Like, you have to keep the puppet. And he was right. Like, the fact that it's a puppet helps a lot. And even, is it Deborah Chow, who directed Episode 3, the first woman to ever direct live-action Star Wars anything. And Episode 4 is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, Ron Howard's daughter.
Yep.
But Deborah Chow, I think that's her name. I hope I'm not misremembering her name. But she said that halfway through the shoot, she was giving directions to the puppet. Which is how when Lucas said he would do that, like Irvin Kershner and Lucas would do that to Yoda when Frank Oz was doing Yoda. So like that is the sign that it's working.
Yeah,
basically.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but the thing that I was amazed by when that started popping up is almost no one complained.
The Yoda stuff.
That Yoda was being posted.
I didn't see anyone complain.
Now, part of it may be because...
It was always just, oh.
Yeah, well, part of it may be because when you see Baby Yoda, you can't be angry.
You can't. You really can't. If you are, you're a miserable person. That's all I gotta say.
But I do appreciate that Lucasfilm made a conscious effort to make sure no one knew that was going to happen before it happened. Like, the merch isn't going to be ready until May because they didn't want to let it out of their... And there is merch. Like, I was at Disneyland a couple weeks ago, and they had a vehicle from the 4th episode a toy of it, like sitting in one of the stores. I'm like, I don't know what that is. It's called Mandalorian. I guess that's coming up, you know. But so they are not. We're not afraid to do a little minor spoiler, but they kept that thing under wraps. And to be honest, even finding out about it on Twitter, because I just hadn't gotten to it yet, even though I had Disney Plus, I saw that. I'm like, I haven't been shocked by something like that in a long time. I was like, that's great. Like, that makes me want to watch the show. So I think something similar is happening here, where if you aren't already on board with Fallen Order, maybe you see this character is in this, and you're like, oh, I got to see what happens there. Because it doesn't give away what happening.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, this guy's in it. You know, it's like knowing Thanos is in Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't ruin Guardians of the Galaxy. It just tells you Thanos is in it. So, I mean, it's a little weird to do less than a month after, but like Sony's Spider-Man trailers, both Homecoming and Far From Home and Amazing Spider-Man 2, the trailers have the last shot of the movie in them.
Yeah, it's true.
So like,
so there is an example. I was asking earlier for another example, and there's one.
I mean, I can't think of an example for video games, but I can certainly think of examples for movies, and they're almost all Sony. Sony marketing does not care.
Well, the other thing about it too is the irony of spoilers is that unless you've already experienced the piece of content or entertainment or whatever, you don't even know it's a spoiler. Mm-hmm. It's only when somebody else tells you, hey, that's a spoiler, do you realize that it actually is one.
Right.
It's like you can't just watch. If you just watch that commercial on television and you hadn't played the game, nobody's going to watch that and see that shot and say, oh my God, I can't believe they spoiled that. Because you don't know it's a spoiler.
Right.
Like
most of the people I've seen complaining about this are people who have already finished the game.
Right. It's like it's not a spoiler for you. You are causing the problem by telling people it's a spoiler. Now they know. Now they're going to be like, oh, I guess that character that's in that commercial is a big deal. I had no idea. Now I do. Now I'm pissed off. Now I'm disappointed. It's crazy.
I mean, I think it's probably like in terms of like getting people in and on board for like a holiday purchase, like it's probably wise to put that character in the marketing.
Yeah.
You don't know that that's at the end of the game unless you know you've been to the end of the game.
Yeah.
It makes sense that character would be here in this period.
I think it's just another case of internet manufactured outrage.
Well, everybody's got to be mad about something.
It's so funny. I don't understand it. Like, why? Life is so much better when you're not angry. Like, try it sometime.
Yeah.
Life
is often better when you're not on the internet.
It's true. It absolutely is true. Like, when I go home over Christmas, I just disconnect. And those, like, week and a half, 10, 13 days or whatever, are the most peaceful days of my entire year. It's like I'm not worried about what people are saying on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. It's nice. It's good to disconnect every once in a while and reconnect with real people and reality. So, yeah, this to me is much to do about nothing. Another manufactured
It's just another
story.
Woman yelling at a cat.
Pretty much. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the Steam controller, Matt. Did you ever buy a Steam controller?
No.
I just did.
Did you get your order through? They didn't
I
cancel
did,
it?
yeah. I got one for $5.
Yeah.
So, why did you never buy one?
Because it doesn't have analog sticks.
Yeah. Is that the deal breaker?
I don't need one.
I thought it did have a stick.
No, it's just like kind of trackpad, D-paddy sort of thing as far as I knew. I have an Xbox Elite controller. I do not need... I guess it does have little sticks, but like those things on the sides, like I don't... What the hell is that? I mean, I know what they're for, but I'm never going to... I have a mouse. Like, I'm not going to ever use it for that.
Well, it's just like the trackpad on the DualShock 4.
Right,
it's
but I have an Xbox Elite if I want to play with a controller, and if I want to play with a mouse, I have a mouse, and I don't do the big screen thing, so...
Yeah. I mean, it was designed to play PC games on a TV.
I mean, if I'd seen it for $5, that maybe, but I didn't, so, oh well.
Yeah. I look, again, because I've been deal hunting for the last, week, I saw it as soon as it broke, so I did get one.
There's one thing I don't need is more controllers.
Really?
I have a lot of... I got to get rid of some controllers.
Yeah,
some of them are... I mean, not the current ones. I mean, a lot of them are old. I don't know how I ended up with so many Dreamcast controllers, but it's got to stop.
I know why I ended up with a bunch of them, because at that Sega Fire sale, when the Dreamcast was discontinued, you could buy controllers for $3.
Yeah, that might be what happened. You're right.
I still have 5 Dreamcast controllers of all different colors, NIB.
Mine are all yellow.
Never opened.
Mine are all, not yellow. They're white. It used to be white. Several of them are yellow now.
Oh yeah, the controller I got at launch is ugly. Like,
Yeah.
white controllers in general are a bad idea because they almost always yellow or get brown or whatever. But look, I have like 6 Nintendo 64 because back then, like, you needed controllers. Like, now you don't really. Like, every system I've bought for the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, I just have 2 controllers because I never need more than that. There's never any 4-player.
Sometimes I don't even have that much.
Yeah, I mean, there's never 4-player couch play. I haven't done that since like 2000.
Well, at some point, I remember I needed to do I needed a second player for a trophy on a PS4 game, and I realized I didn't have a second controller. So what I ended up doing is I plugged in one of my fighting sticks, and because all I needed was a second player to be in the game and then do what I needed to do, and it counted because it was co-op or whatever.
Yeah.
So I literally just plugged in a fighting stick and hit start on it and had that work. But I had no second controller for a long time.
You don't need them anymore. Why do you think that the Steam controller failed, not from you personally, but just in general? Because it's Valve. Generally, it makes really good stuff, really thoughtful stuff that, they know what they're doing. They've been PC gamers as long as anyone.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even know it wasn't doing well until they shut it down last week.
Oh, I mean, look at Steam Link, too. I mean, they ended up having to give those away as well. I mean, you can get those now for like $5 or $10.
Yeah.
So
I got one for like $1.75 or something.
Yeah, it seems the last 2 pieces of hardware that Valve put out that was not VR related have completely tanked. But what do you think? Do you think because over the last 5 years it's become much easier to use console controllers on your PC? Do you think that's why people are like, why do I need a Steam controller?
I mean, partly, but I think it's also just like, I think the vast majority of people who use Steam do not play it on a TV or at least if they do, they probably bring a wireless keyboard and mouse with them, and they just don't.
They don't need it.
Why use this halfway solution when you have the real thing one way or the other, whichever you want? That's my thing. Is I don't play Steam stuff on my TV because it's in the other room and the network isn't fast enough really to play it with that. Like I tried it because the house is all wired, but I tried it. And you can't do the counters in Batman Arkham City because it's too slow.
It has to be a specific genres.
Yeah, and frankly, stuff that you use a mouse for, I generally prefer to play at a computer desk.
Yeah, and I mean the truth be told, though, a lot of franchises where you used to look at them and be like, that will never work with a controller and like sticks and buttons.
Yeah, pretty much everything.
They've figured out how to make it work now. Like you can play Civilization with a normal console controller, and you can play it just fine. And that's those are the type of games that I found myself playing with my Steam Link, games that aren't dependent upon latency to...
Yeah, I mean, I think some things are still I wouldn't want to try to play, Total War with a controller.
Right.
But, I'm sure you could do it, but, why would you? It just wasn't a priority, and if I wanted to play stuff with a controller, I think the Xbox Elite controller is probably the best controller I've ever owned, so why would I downgrade to a Steam controller, frankly?
Yeah. I mean,
but I don't know why, widely it failed. Maybe because the same reason the Steam boxes failed, people would rather do it themselves or use stuff they already have.
Even watching this promo video from Valve where it's trying to sell the controller, I struggle to see... Now, there was one case that
it's also ugly as hell.
It is ugly. But the only case that I've seen in this B-roll where I'm like, oh, that's a good idea, was watching them type. Because it's way easier to go around an on-screen keyboard when you have that trackpad. But otherwise, they're even showing, I don't even know if that was Age of Empires or what.
Hey, Sony, you have that,
They
right?
do. It's been on the DualShock 4 all along. Yeah, seriously. But maybe they just feel like that theirs isn't accurate enough to.
Remember when Sony's on PlayStation 3, I think it was, where when the keyboard popped up to enter text, it was in alphabetical order.
Yeah, it wasn't a keyboard.
How fucked up is that? I'm like.
Well, look, they're a Japanese company. Japanese keyboards are way different than Western keyboards.
Or sometimes they do the thing where it popped up and it was like the old cell phone keyboard where you had to press 5 3 times to get
so bad.
Guys.
I don't know what they were thinking. I really have no idea.
Yeah, that was standard issue at the time for them, but it's just Xbox was so far ahead of them on that.
Oh, yeah. So do you think that we'll ever see a controller like this again, made specifically for PC gaming?
Probably not until Epic tries it.
You do think someone else will try it again, though?
I think it's inevitable that someone will try it again. Yeah. I don't know if it'll be any more successful than what it already is, but
I just wonder if people look at it and they're like, if Valve couldn't make it work, how do we make it work?
Yeah, but that's why I said Epic, because
right? Because they try to do everything.
Tim Sweeney don't care.
He really doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't look at Valve like a lot of people do. He looks at them as a leader that can be toppled instead of this infallible entity. And I think most people look at it the other way.
Like, other people would be like, oh no, if Valve can't do it, what can we do? And Tim Sweeney's like, Valve fucked up. Let's move in
and do it better. Yeah, absolutely. So
he sees opportunity where everybody else sees a cautionary tale.
Yeah. You still might be able to find these for $5. I'm not sure. I jumped on it right away.
They started canceling orders.
Oh, they did?
So they clearly ran out of stock.
It's interesting that nobody cared until they were going away. Because they've been
should have sold it for $5.
I mean,
the whole time.
They've been cheap for a long time. Like they've been like $10 or whatever for quite a while. And dropping it that $5, I don't think that's what convinced people to do it. I think they're like, oh, this is going away. I'll never be able to get one.
Probably a combination.
Might be
things.
A collector's thing at some point, although I doubt it. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. Well, it's just also for me, I was like, I don't need another controller of any. I mean, same reason I didn't order that Super Nintendo Switch controller, even though it did sell out. But like, would I want that? No, it's just more clutter.
You just don't need it. It's like you can plug any controller into the USB port on your rig, and they work.
Yeah.
Like even like these 8-bit dos, like every third-party company that's making controllers, make sure that those controllers you just plug and play on PC.
Yeah,
and you can do that with your Xbox controller you already have, your DualShock 4 you already have. Even now you can use Joy-Cons on PC if you want to work for it a little bit. So I just don't know if there's a market for controllers like this, and going forward, I think there's even less of one. So I think this might be the unicorn. Like, I think this might be that one time where a big company decided, you know what, we're going to invest a ton of R&D and money for manufacturing into this idea, and we'll see what happens. And they saw what happened.
Well, that's what happens.
Yep, and that's what happened. So there you go. Again, another instance where I wish we had taps on the TriCaster so we could send the Steam controller off in glory, but maybe someday, maybe for next year, maybe for next season. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the last decade. It's hard to believe. When I was thinking about this topic today, doing pre-production for the show, it was really hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that we're 20 years past Y2K.
Yep.
That's bonkers. Like,
Blade Runner takes place in the past now.
I know. It's nuts. Like, I think
I was talking to one of my friends who was we were just talking about old job interview stories, and one of his old job interviews was at Lucasfilm back in the day, when it was up in Marin, and he had to go to Marin. He'd never been to the Bay Area before. He drove up in a rental car, and he did the interview, and he had to get back to the Oakland airport, but he took a wrong turn and ended up on the Golden Gate Bridge. And
not a bad place to end up, but
if you're
not where you want to go.
Trying to make a flight at Oakland, not the best place to be.
Yeah.
And so he goes, and he's like, and he says, and I couldn't figure out where I need to go, and it was 2000, so like my phone was useless. And I'm like, because it didn't have Google Maps or any kind of like, there was no
GPS.
There's no GPS. There's no, and I was like, that's funny that like our tech we had in the year 2000, we now think of as back when shit didn't work properly.
Yeah.
Like it was primitive now.
It's pretty crazy to think about, man. Like 20 years since Y2K.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is for our generation growing up, Generation X is what we're usually kind of put into, the box we're put into.
Assuming we're mentioned at all.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're kind of irrelevant. We become
we're too small to be
the lost generation.
We're sort of that's a different generation.
Right.
But we're sort of stuck between the boomers and the millennials.
Yeah.
Drinking our wine, sharing it with the zoomers.
Yeah.
Let's let them fight.
Yeah. But I think a big part of why it's hard for me to comprehend that we've made it to 2020 is because we were growing up, like, you kind of had this thing in the back of your head that, like, we were never going to get here.
Right.
Do you have that, like...
No, I mean, that was definitely a thing. Like
all the far-flung sci-fi movies were set in, like, 2020. Like,
you had 2020, 2025.
Yeah.
Like, those are kind of the far-flung things. Or even the year, I mean, the year 2000 was a big thing back,
Yeah, the world was going to end. All the computers were going to shut down.
Conan did all this stuff for, like, in the year 2000. Like that. And even that, you remember, like the History Channel used to run that show Beyond 2000 about like new military tech, and then Tech TV picked that up while we worked there and had to change the title because it was 2002.
Yep. But there was just this pervading opinion that something was going to happen where we were never going to reach like the point where this stuff was going to happen, and it is kind of weird to think.
Well, I mean, we still don't have our flying cars.
Right. And that's what I was about to
The
say.
year 2000. Where are the flying cars? Where? Why? Why? That was a great ad.
But it is funny to think about 20 years ago where you thought tech would be now and where it ended up. You're right. Like, I think we all were like flying cars. Like, we thought it was going to be like the Jetsons.
I never thought flying cars were going to be a thing.
But I think we thought it was going to be more like the Jetsons and less like society's always been with a couple gadgets.
But that's also what the future always is. Like,
Yeah.
Walt Disney can tell you about how you're going to live in a plastic house in 1986 all he wants, but it's not going to be a thing,
Yeah.
Like, and the other thing is, like, you can't predict what the crazy swerves are going to be. Like,
You can't.
very few old sci-fi novels, no matter how prescient and smart they were, even like, 2001: A Space Odyssey, they didn't call the internet.
Right.
Nobody
thought of it.
And of course, the
Nobody
big thing,
thought of like cell phones either.
Well, no, I mean, cell phones were not out there. I mean, cell phone
you look
technology.
at like Star Trek and their little gadgets.
Yeah, but a lot of cell phone tech was based on Star Trek.
Sure.
Like, that's one of the reasons. But then the thing you can't predict is the iPhone.
Yeah.
Like, the iPhone is the most influential device in the history, probably at least the last century.
Probably.
Maybe planes. But like,
Yeah.
But in terms of how something influences everything, the iPhone is top 3 at the very least. Because and after that, it all changes to the point that if you go back and even watch like the first Transformers from 2007, the fact that they're all talking on Nokias and they're displaying like a Nokia phone is like the cutting edge of tech is bizarre.
It is
now.
bizarre.
Because
Yeah.
everyone's like, what? It has buttons? What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
The fact that even your grandparents know what apps are
I know.
now.
Yeah.
Remember when killer app was a thing you had to explain to people?
Yeah.
No, everybody understands what that is
Oh, yeah,
now
yeah.
because they know what an app is.
I mean, look, all our verbiage has translated over to mainstream.
Yeah.
All those things that we've been saying for 20, 30 years, they're all just part of vernacular now. They're not like these nerd coin terms.
I see that when I go back home and people are like, wow, like, because I worked at a comic store in high school, a comic arcade porn rental shop, and it was downtown.
One of those. It's kind of like one of those.
There were more of those than you might think in the 90s. I'm just saying.
It's kind of like one of those combination Taco Bell Pizza Huts.
A little bit, yeah. The tacos are just a very different breed. But yeah, that was where I everybody would come in and see me sometimes and be like, oh, you want
the
to
nerd
play
with
Mortal
the comics and the
Yeah.
and the games.
But, a lot of them were drama nerds or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there was.
But now comics
but now you go
are
back
as
and everyone's
mainstream
like,
as they get.
People are like, oh, comics, that's nice, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. But now there's like, oh my God, Iron Man. I'm like, see, yeah.
Now
Like,
they're into it more than like we are. Like,
and to be fair, like
funny.
you give them like an old comic, and they still think it's stupid because they are stupid.
Right.
But like the characters,
they just go with the flow.
The characters have a mythic quality to them that you can adapt into almost anything, which is why Superman's still around almost 100 years later.
Yeah.
As much as DC is trying to prevent that from continuing in these terrible films, but like. It's interesting to see how like even going back for like high school reunions, like a couple of my old teachers were like, I used to get in arguments sometimes about how like pop culture stuff is valid, Star Wars is a valid text, like it's not especially when you made the mistake of telling me that like Charles Dickens and Jane Austen were basically pulp novelists of their time. I'm like Jane Austen is Twilight. Like that's the same thing.
It is,
and like it's just because it's 100 years later and we think she's much smarter than they would have thought at the time because she uses words and grammar that we don't use anymore, and it seems complicated to us, but really it was a soap opera. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's all X-Men is. X-Men is a soap opera.
Oh yeah, for sure.
With more fighting. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And like some of them was like, yeah, I guess you were right. Like there was that is all that is. That is the niche that fills in the end. And like. Yeah, never tell me that something was popular, especially like Shakespeare. Shakespeare was the Michael Bay of his day.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just a different society.
One of the most accurate like Shakespeare memes ever written is probably the one you can get a shirt with it on. I think where he says, "Oh God, people are still reading Hamlet. I wrote that shit in like one fortnight."
Yeah.
Shakespeare got to get paid. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, yeah, it's totally what Shakespeare would have said. Like,
all right, let's get back to games.
So yeah.
I think we just established the context for you guys, though. Yeah. Like, how quickly, especially now, like, back the 70s to, like, the 90s, not a whole lot changed. Look at what's happened in, like, 20 years now.
I mean, some changes. Like, it's interesting to me till even you watch the Star Wars trilogy and the hair. The hair from from Star Wars 1 to Return of the
No,
Jedi.
I'm just saying, like, society in general didn't change all that
Sorta.
much. We
I mean-
still had cars that guzzled gas, and, like, most of the tech was basically the same.
Well, I think you had a big change in the 70s when unleaded became mandated by law. The changeover from leaded gasoline was a big deal.
Yes. Saved millions of lives.
Fuel economy, the compact car. I mean, like there were shifts. But I don't think you ever saw anything as rapid as the internet being introduced in the mid '90s, and then 10 years later the iPhone, and from there everything has just skyrocketed. We've lived through a period of very rapid social change, in part because I think one of the things you notice is like you've got all these cadres of people that believe crazy shit, anti-vaxxers or flat Earth people or whatever. In the old days before the internet, those people would never have found each other.
No, they wouldn't.
But now it's easy to find other people that have the same defect you do and be like, oh, we're all together now. And
they'd have a horse in a cart, and they'd be out on the road selling elixirs.
Yeah, echo chambers are much easier to find now.
They are. That's true. So,
and now children are dying. So good job, internet.
Yeah.
But like, that's the big change, I think, is these sort of places.
It's accelerated.
Yeah, and you see good sides of that too, where people
sure.
who have disabilities are able to find each other, or minorities, or the LGBT community finding ways to support each other, even though they've never met each other. That kind of thing is great.
It can be used for good. It can be used for bad.
Yes. Also true of CG special effects, which people forget.
All right, let's go back to games. I don't know if there's any industry that kind of mirrors the advancements of society like games have, because you had the first, 15 years of games. They were 2D. They were pretty crude.
They almost died.
The increments were very small. Then, like, once you hit, I guess around 2000, that's when you start seeing the acceleration of the industry. 3D.
I think the Dreamcast bringing 3D into a realm where you didn't have to be told what it was.
Yeah.
Because if you go back and look at some of that PS1 stuff, it's just like, what, that's a person?
Right.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
It doesn't have eyes. I don't know what that is. But the Dreamcast was the first time you looked at something, it's like, oh, I know what that is. Instantly, it looks like a cartoon of this thing. I think it's the combination of that and the introduction of online.
Yep.
To consoles. I mean, obviously, PCs had been doing that for a while.
2000 to 2010, just immense movement for games. What about the decade we're about to talk about? What about from 2010 to 2020? What do you think is kind of the overarching themes around the past decade?
Money.
You just mean
budgets.
They're making more of it, or they're
making more of it, spending more of it, asking for more of it. Like, I mean, that to me, the budget's getting bigger is definitely a thing, especially in the rise of the HD era.
Yeah.
Which, as we recall, as Sony said, begins when we say it does.
Right.
Oh, that company. But like, to me, it's like the rise in budget, the rise in production value that accompanies it, the rising cost of the hardware, the rising cost of the games to some degree, and the rise in what they expect you to pay, especially in terms of the games as a service microtransaction situation. The shift in the business model of how they get money out of us is probably the thing that, to me, defines the last 10 years the most.
I would agree with that, but I would also tie into that in the last 10 years, we've really seen the rise of indie games. So people who want to make games in the last 10 years have found that there's a number of ways to do it. Mm-hmm. It used to be either you get a job at Activision or some other publisher, or you just don't work in the industry. That, to me, is a big shift over the last 10 years. A guy in a bedroom now has the ability and the tools and the wherewithal and the resources to make a video game.
However, I would argue that is still part of what I'm talking about, in the sense that rise in cost and business model basically forced out the B-listers.
That's what I was getting at.
Then the indie scene rose to fill that void.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's that B tier. I mean,
what we lost
lately, it seems like we've been getting a few B tiers, but
yeah, I mean, some of them do come back once in a while, but like what we lost from like basically the what would have been PS2 shovelware is now made by people who care about what they're making.
And you also,
I think that's a huge upgrade.
Absolutely. And you're also buying them for 10 or 15 bucks instead of 40, 50, 60. Mm-hmm. So I think that, to me, is kind of the biggest shift. Anybody can make games now, and therefore the market is flooded with video games. And I'll get to, we're going to make some picks here. When I get to some of my picks in a bit, I'm going to kind of compare software output between generations, so I don't want to kind of spoil that conversation yet. But that, to me, has been like the biggest change, because you got to figure by 2010, we already had Xbox Live, and it had been out for years and had been iterated on and kind of was there. Like, there haven't been that many changes or updates to Xbox Live or PlayStation Network in the last 10 years, other than PlayStation Network becoming a pay service and getting better. But what we had with Xbox Live 10 years ago is still basically what we have now. Some would argue it was maybe better then.
I would definitely argue it was better.
I mean, think about that.
Xbox One is still playing catch-up on what Xbox 360 had turned into by the end of its life.
Yeah, so to me, this last decade hasn't really been about tech. I agree that the developers have gotten better. I think that comes with having access to libraries and middleware. I think that's been a big shift. I mean, you can create pretty damn good-looking games with like a team of like 3 or 4 people now, and that's a testament to the tools. But otherwise, it's kind of been a stagnant decade for games, don't you think?
Not really.
Think back. I mean, go back to 2000 to 2010. Go back from 1990 to 2000, 80 to 90. There are huge things that happen there.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like revolutions in how we present like 2D to 3D or that kind of, or the advent of online, all right. But like, in terms of sort of honing these things and the big, finding what a AAA game should be and kind of what that experience is expected to be, like I think a lot of progress has been made there, or regression, depending on how you feel about that world these days. I mean, certainly Jim Sterling would have an argument to make there. The rise of the indie game is kind of a honing of a totally different form of games. Like, we didn't, I mean, as much as they call back to like older games, like we didn't have anything like After Party or like Papers, Please.
They just didn't exist.
It's the melding of like retro ideas that can still be done on an affordable budget, plus incredibly high concept stuff that no one would have attempted before. That I think is sort of like one of the biggest hallmarks, and that applies to AAA to some degree as well. If you take out the reasonable budget element, like. The fact that they'd even attempt something like God of War or Detroit Become Human, as much as I don't like that game, or even Disco Elysium, but like the fact that there's that feeling of wanting to attempt that, whereas I think the decade previous, the aughts, so to speak, while there was the revolution of the online thing, I don't think there was as much boldness in terms of what people were trying to make, and it was more about iteration on an existing format. Whereas I think mainly because of the indie scene, you've seen so much innovation in terms of like, what if we just did this? What if we made this?
And you can do that now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think some of it bleeds through into AAA. I mean, I think you could lump Dark Souls into that world where like who else would make that game other than From Software, other than these people that had... I mean, Kingsfield was basically the same game without as much refinement, and they sort of perfected the formula, and now it's bleeding into even... the Star Wars game took stuff from that. Like, that's crazy.
For sure.
Like, that is sort of the biggest revolution, I would say, is sort of this from the ground up, delivering of new ideas that aren't coming out of the major publishers that have the money to implement them on large scales, but they're coming out of these smaller developers that have the courage to try it. And I think that was not an element of game development on that budget level before this decade. So that would be my pick for like in terms of sort of like creative output, the most important. I don't want to use the term revolution, but sort of like shift, I guess.
Yeah. Fire Native in chat brought up DLC and microtransactions, but if you've been a PC gamer for a long time, that's nothing new, really. There have been expansions, and living games have been a thing on PC for a long time.
Yeah, and subscriptions for going back to EverQuest and Ultima Online and stuff
like
that.
That's not that big of a shift. I think if you've only played console games all this time, then it is.
And I do think, I still do say like how they get money out of us and how they spend money is the most notable change this last 10 years. Yeah. And Horse Armor was before this decade.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until this decade that it really hit critical mass.
Yep, for sure. So that's kind of our overview of the last 10 years, at least what we think.
I do enjoy that EA finished the decade out by putting out a single-player game with no multiplayer that outsold its 2 multiplayer games from the same license.
Yeah. It was very rewarding.
Learn something, please.
Yeah. It was very rewarding to see the financial results for Fallen Order, for sure. Yeah. I was like, hey, all right.
Imagine if you let them finish the next one.
Yeah, imagine what could happen. Absolutely. So Matt and I, now that we've kind of went over our impressions of the last 10 years, we are going to start picking our favorite games from the last decade. We have both picked our top 5 games. We're going to count them down 5 to 1. And then once we get through all 5 games, we're going to pick our favorite platform from the last 10 years. So let's get to the games first, Matt. What is your number 5 pick for game of the decade and why?
My number 5 pick is Batman Arkham City.
Arkham City.
So I love the Arkham games. I would, if you ask me a different day, I might say Arkham Asylum for this part.
That's why I said Arkham City, because I think a lot of people debate what the best are from the two.
People go back and forth, and the real difference is that Arkham Asylum is Metroid and Arkham City is Zelda. Arkham Asylum is set in a kind of a claustrophobic, like, maze of a place.
Yep.
All contained. You kind of go through and access more and more of it as you gain more abilities and more gadgets, and that's sort of just how the Metroid thing rolls. Arkham City is a big open area. You go and do stuff in the overworld, but you also, to advance the story and advance side quests, you go to specific buildings, which are basically little dungeons. So it's the Zelda format.
Yep.
And basically, I think which one you prefer is a little more related to A, what you prefer your game to be, and B, what you prefer your Batman to be. And for me, Batman is on the rooftops, in the streets.
I think a lot of people agree with you
gliding through Gotham. This gives me the Batman experience in a way that Arkham Asylum, while I would never really argue with someone who said Asylum was a better game, this is a better Batman game.
I understand that.
And I remember Arkham Asylum was just a shock to the system. It was like, wow, a good Batman game. It's a great Batman game. And then City followed it up perfectly, and then Knight dropped the ball completely. Which is why Knight is not my pick here, even though it did give you a Batmobile. But a Batmobile is not the tank. Not a tank. I don't know what they're doing. Where is the next one, by the way? It's been half a decade.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen, Matt.
But this is the defining superhero game to me. I weighed back and forth between this and Spider-Man, because obviously we talked about, is Spider-Man the new best superhero game? Yeah. And given kind of a year or so of distance from it, I still think Arkham City is the king.
Okay.
And I have played this game 3 separate times.
It's like picking between your kids,
right?
Yeah,
but I played this game 3 separate times, 100%ed it every time, different platforms. I played, original Xbox 360, PC, and then the remaster they did on Xbox One. And you'll find that one of the recurring themes of my list is, have I played it 3 times?
Yeah,
a lot of all the games on my list I've played through three separate times. I did a lot of playtime comparison, and
that's probably a good way to approach it. If you're going to play a game 3 times, you love it. Yeah. That's the bottom line.
So that would be why this is kind of above the other Arkham games. And I just, the 5th place in this is kind of a hard pick, because you're like, so many things could be 5th place.
Yeah, and I switched out my 5th pick literally like 10 times.
Yeah, and it came down to kind of the thing I wanted to most recognize, and the thing that gave me the warmest feeling, and like the fact that there's a good Batman game that I can go back to over and over, like this one. Voiced by Kevin Conroy, voiced by Mark Hamill. It's great. Like, they're probably honestly never gonna top this game for me.
Try to keep the faith. You never know.
I love it, but I don't know. Like, it's
pretty
so good.
Perfect.
It's so good.
Yeah. Okay, time for my pick for number 5. And Matt did bring to my attention that this pick is cheating a little bit, because it came out in May of 2009.
Was that it? May?
Yeah. So it's like 10 years old plus like a couple months.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't find out it existed until I think spring 2010.
Yeah, because anyway, my pick is League of Legends. I should say that before we get into any more conversation. And this was a pick where I kind of took the same approach that you did. I started looking back over the last 10 years, and I was like, which games have I spent the most amount of time with? Now, that wasn't absolute for me. I didn't just say, okay, I played this game for X number of hours. That means it's going to make my top 5. It was a function of the two. How much time did I spend with it?
It was basically like a way to sort of like, okay, what are the standouts here?
Yeah.
Like, what are the things I've spent the most time with?
The other thing I should mention, too, is this is not Matt and I declaratively stating these are the best 5 games from the last 10 years. These are our favorite 5 games from the past. If we were doing a list, top 10 games of 2010 to 2020, our picks would be different because then you're making a list for someone else. These are our picks for the last 10 years. So just keep that in mind as we go through these. Because I'm sure a lot of you guys are like, League of Legends, are you insane? I love League of Legends. I love it. I've been playing it for years and years. I never get sick of it. I feel like I'm always getting better at the game. I feel like almost every time I play, I get humbled by somebody where I think I'm good, and then I play somebody, I'm like, oh, I'm not good. Like, these kids are freaking good. The amount of time that I've spent with it and the fact that I've never grown tired of it, and look, it is a multiplayer game, which is cheating a little bit, I guess you could say.
I don't think it's cheating. I get tired of multiplayer games in a day.
That's true. That's true.
So I think if it holds like that, that still says something about it.
And the other thing I would say to skirt around the fact that it's not exactly less than 10 years old is that when the game first launched, it was a shell of what it is now. I would argue it wasn't even really the same game. It kind of had the same premise, but they hadn't really figured it out yet, how it was going to work as far as team play and things like that. The game really, like 18 months after launch, is when it really kind of became what it was going to be. And obviously, it became an international sensation, still one of the most popular games in the world. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason that, 20,000 people will file into an arena to watch somebody else play this game. I do wonder, though, in the context of esports, if people are ever going to care about games that they don't themselves play. Because you think about sports, it's like most NFL fans have never played football, will never play football. They still like watching football. I just wonder if League of Legends will ever get to a place where people who don't actually play it care enough to watch other people play it.
I mean, I think part of the problem that esports is always going to have is that when you are watching it happen, you are not watching the people that are doing it. Like, one of the advantages that, like, say, the NFL or other sports have is that the entire time you're watching the competition, you are watching these people. You are identifying with these people. You are ingraining Drew Brees' face into your
That's
mind.
true.
You are,
Yeah.
you are associating these people with these actions and these feats, and you always have to cut away from the esports athletes to show the actual game.
Yeah.
And that creates this disconnect, and you think,
That's a good point.
You think more of the character than you do of the person, and I think it's very hard to kind of instigate the tribalism that you require a critical mass of to make a sports thing big. Like even in the Olympics, when you don't really know who any of the people are, but they're playing under that American flag, I think that's kind of like one of the smarter things Overwatch did. Was it
The
organized things
city-based
by
teams.
city?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if there's a solution to that. I do know that almost everyone I knew who worked esports production at Riot has left by now and gone on to do other things. So I don't know if that means anything, but at the very least, I think the inertia of this will keep it kind of top of that game for a very long time.
Yep. Hey, I still
If
play.
someone can figure out how to make money broadcasting that, you got a gold mine ahead of you.
Yep, I still play. I don't get to play very often because I'm so dang busy with Sifted. But if you guys want to add me on League of Legends, I am the real Dinfire. Somebody else had Dinfire, so I had to go with the real Dinfire. So add me and we'll be friends, and maybe someday we can play together. But I love League of Legends. I've never grown tired of it. I've never found my interest in it waning. Every time I feel like I'm starting to burn out, I just start trying to learn how to play a new champ. And every champ is so different that it becomes like you're playing the game for the first time all over again. So I'm a big fan of League. If any of you guys play, hit me up. All right, Matt, what is your number 4 pick for the best game of the decade?
Number 4 is No Man's Sky.
Before you sent me your list, I knew this was going to make it. I didn't know where, but I knew it was going to be on there.
So this is the exception to the finished 3 times thing, because obviously this game pretty much goes forever.
Yeah, you don't really finish it.
I mean, you can get to the center of the galaxy and reset everything. I mean, but you're still playing after that.
Right.
So my shift on this is that I have played it on 3 separate platforms. So I played it on PC, Xbox, and PS4. My most advanced save is on PS4 because that's the one I got first. And I was playing it again this week because they dropped a new update out of frickin' nowhere on
crazy.
Thanksgiving morning.
Yeah.
Like Hello Games
Thank
is
you.
just a bunch of beasts over there.
It is.
And it wasn't a huge update. It didn't like change a ton of stuff, but it did let you upgrade your spaceship finally.
That's a big deal.
To higher like letter grades, which means that I've had the same ship since the first version of the game, because there was that thing where you could go and every time you found a new crash ship, there was it was one slot bigger. So I went and did that and traded up ships constantly until I got a full 48 slot ship that's also a fighter because I wanted a fighter. Nowadays, fighters can't have that many slots. So my fighter is like a weird ass ship now, but now it was a C class because I had it from before they implemented the letter grading of the ships, but now I can upgrade that ship. So I've got
That's
it upgraded
awesome.
to an A class. I'm saving up my nanas for an S class, so it will be as good as anything that you could have gotten recently. Now all I need is for them to let me paint the damn thing. Because it's this.
You've been asking for that for
it's this
3 years.
disgusting like puke seafoam green, and I would really like it to be almost any other color. But anyway, obviously there's a lot of people that hated this when it came out. I did not. I played it 100 hours or so when it first came out. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah, for you, this game ended up absolutely delivering.
Yes.
Because the narrative around it when it came out was, oh my gosh, everybody was so hyped for this, and it's a total letdown. But that never really happened with you.
It was not that far off what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I think you had more realistic expectations.
Yeah, definitely. And then they've made it better and better over time. Like I would say the game as it exists now is far better than I ever would have imagined it to be. Like they've done crazy post-launch support on this thing. Added all kinds of weird new, the base building and the vehicles and the underwater stuff is great, and like they just keep improving this thing and making it more interesting. They've added a lot more story stuff. There's like a 20-30 hour story to it now, which is really creepy, I might add. Like, I mean,
ultimately they delivered the game that people unrealistically expected at launch.
Yeah, and you can run around. I was playing yesterday, and I ran into another player for the first time ever.
Wow!
Like they do market. Like there's a. Like, I was looking at the galaxy map, and there was a player icon next to a system near me. And I knew I was near players because I was running into solar systems that had been discovered by other people. So clearly I was running into a populated section of the galaxy. And so I went over to that star system that had the player icon next to it, and I went and I landed at the space station. There was another guy there. First time I've ever seen that.
That's crazy.
Organically happen.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's all happening. Like, all the stuff people thought was going to be there, it's there now.
Yeah.
And then some.
And, then a lot. And, most of the updates, this new update, most of the changes are actually quality of life improvements. Like, tons of fixes, tons of things that make things easier. The inventory system is way less annoying now. It's willing to let you stack. I mean, the change in inventory in the previous update, where now instead of being able to hold like 200 of an element, you can hold 9,999 of it because you need that much to build bases and stuff.
Oh, now that they've built out the building.
Yeah, you basically need that level of material to build stuff out the way you want to. And they now this new update expanded the storage cube, so instead of holding like 5, they can hold like 25.
Oh, that's huge.
Slots. Like it's just they've made it more and more friendly to you. But what I really still do is I turn the sound down, and although the music is great, some of the music in this is really good, but turn the sound down, turn on some science podcast or something, just fly around, discover stuff, shoot stuff, gather things, upgrade the ship. Like it's still a relaxing, interesting. Still love exploring in it and looking around and seeing all the weird new shit that you can find, especially as you get closer to the center of the galaxy, the planets get weirder, so you're not always seeing the same thing over and over again. It's just and I recognize that like kind of part of the reason I like it so much is it's just it hits all my quirks, all the things that
it's everything you love.
Arbitrarily like. I like space stuff, but I like it more arcadey than sim. I like seeing weird new alien planet things. I like just scanning shit. I love all that.
It is right Matt Kyle, the video
right there.
Game. Absolutely.
And it would be very hard for me to like legitimately recommend it to like a lot of other people unless I knew they had very similar tastes. But I have spent somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 hours playing this game.
Wow.
And I'm still playing.
Yeah.
So someone asked in the chat what I would recommend in terms of platform. PC. No
really?
Question.
Interesting.
PC. Well, because it gets the updates first and it runs a little smoother. Most of my play has been on the PS4 Pro, specifically because it has the most advanced save.
Yeah, it's the one you've been playing the most.
Yeah, I have almost as advanced save on PC. Xbox is harder because Xbox didn't come out until they did the big multiplayer update last summer. And so obviously I don't have my ship isn't as cool. Like it's actually I'm playing the Xbox save is much more like what I'm supposed to be playing.
Right.
Like my full 48 slot ships and the other 2 saves are like I'm really not supposed to have those.
Yeah.
But like I'm still gonna take it.
So well, hell yeah.
I spent a long time digging up those crashed ships.
How much is this game now? Do you know?
I don't know. I haven't looked in a long. I would guess it's like $30, but maybe it's still
that's
50.
my guess.
It goes on sale almost every time they update it. So wait for the next, because Sean Murray said that like this update this past week was like a small thing, and then they got another big one coming like in a few months. So like wait a few months and get it cheap, because they always put it on sale when that happens.
When they put out a big new update.
So it sounds like you're going to have a chance to get it cheap with a brand new big update soon. It really is a good game now. Like I think it's. I mean, it's not going to like change your mind if you hate survival stuff or you don't like running out of oxygen and having to reach. But they've made stuff a lot easier. One of the big but one of the big tedious things about it was recharging the launch thruster.
Yeah.
So in the not this update, but the previous update, they added a technology that makes the launch thruster slowly recharge itself.
Oh, thank God.
They're
figuring it out slowly.
So I have two upgrades on my launch thruster now. One makes it 100%. I think. Like a little more efficient. So it used to be like took a quarter of your fuel to take off. Now mine takes 20% of my fuel to take off, and the recharge is slow, but I spend enough time scanning stuff and exploring around that by the time I get back to the ship, the 20% is regenerated.
Oh, great.
So I have not had to put launch fuel in my launch thrusters for like 100 hours. It's great.
Yeah, that'll change the game for you.
So it's nothing. I do hope moving forward, not just Hello Games. I hope moving forward, one of the things that developers really start to embrace is the idea of like, if you can make it less tedious, do that.
Yeah.
Like just help me out a little bit. You know, like no one cares about all the weird little thing. Kojima, I'm looking at you. Like,
all right,
and Yu Suzuki while we're at it. I mean, really.
Well, we'll get to him. We will get to him. All right, time for my number 4 pick from the last 10 years. And my number 4 pick is God of War.
Dad of Boy.
Yeah, Dad of Boy.
This is real. This game is actually not on my list, and it hurts me that it's not on my list because it's so good.
Yeah, I can understand why it's not on yours, knowing what the rest of your picks are. And I think once people hear the rest of your picks, they'll totally get why it isn't there.
It just wasn't room.
But I think most people probably would assume that this game was going to be on my list. It's right in my wheelhouse. It's an action RPG. It's based on an old franchise that I resonated with for years, and it kind of lost a little love for over time, but didn't like the fact that I had lost some love for it and wanted my love for this franchise to be rejuvenated. They did that and then some. The game came out at a very vulnerable time in my life. My dad and my sister had just been killed in a car accident, and obviously the themes of this game between father and son, it was almost too much for me to bear at certain points. I may go back and play it now and have it completely.
I just reinstalled it yesterday. Actually.
Did you?
I think I'm probably going to try to play it again soon.
I may go back and play it now and have a different perspective, because as time goes on, obviously wounds heal, and I'm not at the same place mentally as I was when the game came out. But the game is still great. It was just the perfect everything. It was a perfect mix between an action adventure and an action RPG. It didn't go too far one way or the other. The game wasn't bloated. I never got to a point where, like, one of the games that ended up getting cut off the end of this list was Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It was jumping in and out of my list like over and over and over again. And I'd pull it out because I'd be like, oh, that's a bloated game. It's bigger than it needs to be. But it's the best Assassin's Creed ever, in my opinion, and I love the franchise. So this game to me was perfect. There was no bloat. It lasted the exact amount of time that it should have lasted.
Yeah, I don't know if I can think of another game that is exactly as long as it should be.
It was perfect. And everything was perfect because the way all your upgrades were, like, it's just, to me, the perfect game. I really struggle to find faults with this game. I know some people, if you're like a hardcore Dark Souls fan, I'm sure you may have gripes with the combat or whatever. But for me, this game was.
But you're wrong.
I'm
a Dark Souls fan. Yeah. I think combat in this is great.
I'm just allowing for
not everything has to be Dark Souls.
You're right.
That's really if I was, in one of the things, kind of talking about various things for the decade, a couple people I know was like, Dark Souls is overrated, and that like got a bunch of the Dark Souls fans
that
were also in the conversation freaking out. And I'm just like, you know what? I love Dark Souls. I played them all. I like them all. But I think I agree. Like, not because the game is necessarily bad or has problems with the game, but because I am so tired of hearing it's not like Dark Souls, or Dark Souls did it better,
it
or
gets
the
old.
Dark Souls of blank. Like, that's been 10 years of that. I'm just like, I'm done with it. Like, everything doesn't have to be Dark Souls. Everything doesn't have to be compared to Dark Souls.
Yep. The other thing I liked about this game is it doesn't go like 8,000 miles down the rabbit hole as far as upgrades. There are enough upgrades, but you're not constantly getting them. It's not one of those games where every 5 minutes you get a better weapon and you just have to trash your old one. You're allowed to build a relationship with the weapons that you use in this game and get good with them and master them. I just really struggle to find any faults with this game. The theme, there are other themes that I would like more. But other than that, I don't know. To me, it's very close to the perfect modern video game. So there you go. That's my fourth pick. Matt, let's move to your third pick.
Third pick.
Which I'm actually surprised this is here. I really thought it might be number one for you.
Oh, no.
No? Okay.
Number one is number one of the bullet.
Okay.
So number 3 is Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
And the reason I say this is because I know that you have literally spent hundreds of hours playing this game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that doesn't mean I think it's a better game than some of the other. I mean, the reason I've spent that long playing is because that's how long the game is.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, that's part of it.
But again, it's part of the 3 club. I played it 3 times. I didn't even mean to the last 2 times because I played it fully when it came out on the 360, and then I got the special edition. I think I got it cheap on Steam at some point and just never played it. But because I had it, because it was like probably like the Elder Scrolls collection or something, because I wanted to play Morrowind again.
Yeah.
And then when the special edition came out, if you had the old edition on Steam, you automatically got the special edition. And when that happened, I loaded up. I'm like, oh, I'll load up the special edition just to see what it looks like because I haven't played it in a long time. And then 80 hours later, I was like, oh, whoops, I played it again. And then the exact same thing happened on the Xbox One X when I got the Xbox One X and I loaded it up to see how the mod stuff worked and what kind of mods were available. Because I was curious, like the mod, because you really need to mod this game, especially in the modern day.
Yeah.
I mean, this game is almost 10 years old. It barely makes the decade cutoff. And it's and like, so I was like, oh, look at this mod, you can do this instead. So I got like a whole mod set up and did that, and I started like, oh, that looks great. 80 hours later, it sucks me in and doesn't let me go, and the setting is amazing, and I wander through forests all day, and I people say like, oh, the combat is bad, the air animation's bad, and the dialogue is weird, and the story, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I agree with every criticism of this game that pretty much exists, except I cannot stop playing the goddamn thing.
I actually bounced off Skyrim the first time I played it. I got about 8 hours in and just stalled, and I didn't have to play it for coverage. And I was like, okay, I just need to make sure I play this before the end of the year for Game of the Year discussion. So I just I played it so I could talk about it on Invisible Walls, and then I put it away, and then I came back to it. Only after everybody else was like, what are you doing? You should be playing and finishing this game. And I was like, it was from people that I trusted and respected. And I was like, okay, like if this person tells me I should be playing a game, I should be freaking playing it. And so I dove back in, and then I also understood why it was as popular as it was. But I would say this, when I talked about bloated games a couple minutes ago, this is one of the games that comes to mind.
It just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
You got to ignore the Radiant quests pretty early on, or you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. It's so big.
I mean, even when I go through it, like the subsequent playthroughs 2 and 3, all I did was main quests and side quests, named side quests. I never did Radiant stuff because the Radiant stuff is endless.
Yeah.
And doesn't get you anything worth doing. And even with that, 150, 200 hours. I mean,
it's insane. It really is.
Tons and tons.
I mean, you can see why it's taking so long for Bethesda to make the Elder Scrolls 6.
Well, I would also hope that one of the reasons it takes so long. Well, first off, Todd said they haven't even started it when they announced it.
Right.
That the tech doesn't exist yet, whatever the hell that means.
I mean, I'm sure they have the story written.
Yeah, I'm sure they've pre-production, clearly. They at least know where it's going to take place, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But like, one thing I would hope they're doing is like, there is a lot of content in Skyrim, but a lot of it is very samey and cookie cutter. I would hope that they're trying to find a way to make a lot of these things feel more like individual experiences. Like you could list me like elements of like half the side quests in this game, and I wouldn't be able to tell you which one was which.
Right.
Like it all blends together in part because it's so long, but also in part because there's just not that much variety in what happens, and it's more of an obsession or an addiction at some point. I mean, when I played this game, like every time it became kind of a problem. Like it was just something I was doing all the time. Like,
Yep.
This is my MMO addiction. Is like I'm just gonna turn on Skyrim because it's like, well, I could like wash the dishes, or I could walk through a pretty forest with snow on the trees, and I know which one I'm gonna do.
It's like your League of Legends.
Yeah.
Like that's what I do with League. Like if I ever do get a spare like 20 minutes, like, and I don't have anything else I have to do, and I can actually take a breather, I'll play a game of League, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a game that you pick up to play. It's like a therapeutic thing that you can go back to, and you always enjoy it, and it's important.
Especially now that I can do the mods on the Xbox, and then one of the mods is to put in a ring that removes the weight limit.
Yeah.
That
That's
improves the game
literally
tremendously.
game changer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great pick. And I think if we had 100 people do a list of their favorite games from the last 10 years, my guess is it would appear on at least 75%
Quite a few.
of those lists.
I would think so.
Yeah, I definitely think that.
I mean, it doesn't still sell for nothing.
Yep, that's for sure. All right, it's time for my third pick. And this one maybe will surprise people for the opposite reason, but my third pick is The Witcher 3. My game of the year it came out. Again, though, this game also feels a little bloated to me. Not to the extent of Skyrim, because Skyrim didn't even make my list, obviously. It's a vastly superior game to Skyrim.
Yeah, I would say that.
In a number of ways.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I like everything more
it
about
has
it.
characters. The characters are animated well.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I love everything more about it. I love the premise. I love the characters. I love the world that's being built.
Yeah.
I like the combat, everything. It's a better game than Skyrim in pretty much every way. So for a lot of people, Skyrim is their RPG. To me, it's The Witcher 3. Like, it's it's not Skyrim. It's The Witcher 3. Polished despite its size. I mean, relatively polished despite its size. I mean, if you think about, compare it to Skyrim, how broken Skyrim was when it came out. The Witcher 3 had some issues, but nothing like that. It's gorgeous. I mean,
nowadays it's Witcher 3 is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Whereas even replaying Skyrim the last time, like last year, I was like, oh, that's still a problem, huh? Like this quest is still broken like this, and you need a user patch to fix it. Basically, yeah.
Now, one thing I would say, the combat is not quite there. I put a big emphasis on gameplay and things like that. It's still good, but like God of War, to me, I'd rather enjoy the. But,
I mean, Witcher 3's combat gets you there. It's not going to be pulled out by anyone as the best combat ever. And but I do think it gets ripped on too much.
Oh, I'd agree.
It is.
Yeah, it's not as bad as as the haters say, for sure. But I would argue God of War's gameplay, combat is better.
Yeah.
But The Witcher 3 does a lot of other things far better than God of War. Like, as much as the story in God of War resonated with me, the story in The Witcher 3 is just better. There's just all there is to it. There's more characters. There's more development of each one of those characters. There's more variety in the characters. It felt like once you met one person in God of War, you had kind of met them all. Yeah. They all kind of had the same personality.
And this is kind of the opposite of Skyrim in that I can name you almost every character I encountered in this game.
Because you remember
they're all memorable.
Even some of the bit players.
They're not all voiced by the same 5 people.
Yeah. Like you could just see the amount of care, love, and craftsmanship, in all honesty, that went into The Witcher 3 for a game to be... Like, I'll say this game's a little bloated, but it wasn't like playing Skyrim. It never felt like a chore to play this game. There was times where I'm like, okay, I feel like it might be time to wrap this up, and part of it is our jobs, and we always have to move on to the next thing. But it wasn't like with Skyrim for me. Like, I didn't bounce off this game, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I started playing it, and I enjoyed it right from the beginning, and I kept enjoying it. So, that's my number 3 pick, The Witcher 3. All right, we're to number 2 now, Matt. Our top 2 picks for the best game of the last 10 years. What's number 2 for you?
Number 2 is Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
And
that one barely got in under the deadline, too.
And if you want to consider this a pick for the whole trilogy, you can. But if we're picking individual games, Mass Effect 2 is the best of the 3.
I think most people would agree with you on that.
I mean, there's a resurgence in people that think 1 is the best, but I think that's a little crazy because 1's gameplay is far behind the other 2. It's very rudimentary, kind of Unreal Engine standard. Also, I have a slightly negative opinion of its gameplay because the last time I played Mass Effect 1 was on Insanity difficulty, which is just NPCs turning on invincibility, and like you knock them over with the gun and you just empty an infinite ammo gun with no overheating into them until their invincibility stops, and then they die. Like it's bad. I will say that Mass Effect 1 has the best villain. Saren is a great villain.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But Mass Effect 2, while the
combat was
combat's way better.
Oh my
but
god,
also,
it made a huge difference.
The character development is better. So here's the thing about Mass Effect 2 that I love the most about it is Mass Effect 2 got a lot of criticism for being sort of disjointed and that the main story was not a very strong through line. But that's because Mass Effect 2 is not a single narrative story. Mass Effect 2 is a short story collection. Mass Effect 2 has a framing device, which is the hunt for the human Reaper, basically the Reaper that you fight at the end, and like that Cerberus sends you out to deal with at the beginning to gather your team for. But the meat of the game is a collection of short stories that each focus on an individual character in your crew, and that is the brilliance of it. It takes you through these stories that let you get to know these characters in a way that almost no other RPG ever lets you see.
No game ever lets you do that.
No.
Never.
And these are characters that will stick with me for the rest of my life. I will quote Morden and Thane forever, and Garrus and all. And like that's why Mass Effect 3, as much as people hate the ending, I think the ending is fine. Like it's disappointing.
Again, an overreaction.
But it's not like at the end of the world, especially the update, which helped kind of show what happened to people. But also the entire game of Mass Effect 3 is an ending. You're saying goodbye to people constantly. And one of the reasons the endings, the goodbyes to some of these characters work so well is the groundwork they laid in 2. 2 is the heart of the story.
Pay attention to any great television show that you really like. And inevitably, there is an episode almost dedicated entirely to specific characters throughout each season, where...
This is why people got so attached to characters in Lost, even though the overall story of that show is nonsense.
I mean, every great show does it, though. I mean, they have an entire episode where you just spend it with that one character, and you get to learn their backstory, their motivations, where they're coming from, and then from then on, you care about that character.
I always compare it to the episode, because I'm not a huge Lost fan, but I think The Constant... is one of the greatest episodes of television ever made.
Man. It is so good.
And I always compare Mass Effect 2's story structure to that.
Yeah.
It's like
I can see that. Yeah.
You're going through these things with these characters, and like, Shepard's there with them, and they're the only ones that kind of know what happened between them, and like it's great. And you come out of this really caring about everybody. I know people that did actually go through the suicide mission at the end and lost characters, and I can't imagine letting that happen to any of these people. Like it's really good. Mass Effect trilogy is probably my favorite thing from last generation. Like overall, I did total up all my saves. I've played through the full trilogy 3 times. The first game more than that to get more achievements. I have a total of something like 700 hours put into these 3 games.
Crazy.
And Mass Effect 2 is still some of the most memorable game storytelling of all time, and stuff I still remember years and years later. I don't know what happened to that BioWare, but I wish they'd come back.
Well, I'll say this about Mass Effect 2. I
hope they're back for Dragon Age 4, because I feel like we're running out of chances here.
I'll admit I had problems finishing the first Mass Effect, because to me the combat and the gameplay was a huge detriment in that first game. Like, it was bad enough that it bothered me and made me not want to play it.
It's very rough.
It is.
Like the change and sort of the streamlining and refinement that happened in 2... utterly needed.
It changed
and
everything.
That's why I always say, if you're going to remaster these games, you have to remake 1 to bring its gameplay in line with 2 and 3.
Absolutely. Mass Effect 2 is my favorite Mass Effect game as well, so I'm right there with you. All right, my second pick is not Mass Effect 2.
It's kind of the opposite of Mass Effect 2.
It is the opposite of Mass Effect 2. And I had to actually think for a minute whether this game was 10 years old or not.
Yeah. Even for this game series, it has very little story.
It does. Yep. And that game is Super Mario Galaxy 2. Come on, people. You know I'm gameplay first. You knew I had to have at least one example, in my opinion, of a game that is just sublime to play. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is absolutely that game. In fact, I went back and I was grabbing footage for this because we had no footage of this on the TriCaster or anywhere. And it just, again, reminded me of how freaking brilliant this game is. Like, all I had to do was play a couple levels, and I was like, holy, like it was like you. I got hooked on it again, and I just started going through the game again because it's like every stage has at least one little piece. Or look, I mean, just watch this. Like, just look at what you're doing. It's insane. Like, this is 3D Mario. Right in the wheelhouse of Nintendo. This is when they had the best team working with the best ideas.
And also because like this is sort of the game made up of all the ideas that they cut or weren't able to realize in the first Galaxy. So I mean, this is sort of like Mario Galaxy expert levels.
It is. Yeah.
And like,
but they also like they made the overarching hub world far more enjoyable and far more functional. You had already got kind of the spherical worlds in the first game, but they just kind of cranked that up to like 20. I mean, just watching this B-roll, it's insane what's happening right now in this game. Like, technically, to create these circular worlds, like I just read we curated something on Sifted recently where they were talking about how they went from Super Mario 128 to this. Because if you remember that demo of Mario 128 for GameCube, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And it was just a round world that had like 128 Marios running around interacting with each other. Well, that tech was what borne out Super Mario Galaxy. And I respect anyone's opinion if someone will say the first one is better than the second. I'm not going to argue that.
Yeah, honestly, like that's a coin flip a lot of the time for me. But I feel like this is the more, I guess I would say more mature of the two, not in the sense that like it's for adults or whatever, but because they nailed the format, they knew what it was, they knew what it had to be, and they were allowed that now the developers could just design.
It's a lot like Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
The first one was great, had some rough edges, and the second one they basically smoothed those all out and delivered a better overall product. The other caveat too is that the first Super Mario Galaxy did not come out within the 10-year limit, so this also worked out well.
But there's just an element of like, Mario Galaxy 2 is just masters at work.
Oh, yeah. This is like the pinnacle of them at their height of their power.
Yeah. I mean, this is the pinnacle of 3D platforming.
It really is. Really. This is the best 3D platformer ever made, in my opinion. I
would agree with that. I mean, I wouldn't argue very hard against someone who said the first one was.
Super Mario 64? Or the first Galaxy?
Galaxy.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I mean, there's just a level of imagination on display here that is very hard to match, and I don't think was matched in Odyssey.
I think I gave the first Galaxy on game trailers like a 9.3, and the second one got like a 9.8 or something. Like, choose your poison. Like, either one is amazing. This one just happened to come in under the 10-year limit, so it is my pick for number 2. And it is time for you to make your... And I think everybody already knows what your pick is going to be, unless they have not watched GameFace very much.
You're pretty unfamiliar.
Yep, but it is our time to pick our best game from the last decade. Matt, what's your pick?
And like I said, number 1 with a bullet, Witcher 3.
Yeah. No surprise. I think people in chat, as soon as they heard this topic, they knew what game was your pick.
If they hadn't seen this come up yet and they already seen No Man's Sky come up, they probably thought this must be number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my favorite game of the last 10 years by a long margin. Like this is the first one I wrote down when you told me to make the list. I'm like, okay, Witcher's number 1.
Yep.
And we'll just have to decide who fights it out for second place. I mean, you pretty much said a lot of it already, but it's like I love the characters, I love the world, I love being there, I love having a quest book full of stuff to do. I like hunting things down and figuring out how to beat these weird monsters and like
I like that everything is worth it in this game.
Yeah.
Like you do something and you never get there and you're like, really? Mm-hmm. Like I went through all that for this? Like the payoffs are always worth it.
And how like the side quests in this game are better than a lot of games' main quests.
Oh, it's insane. Like you just run across some random person in a hamlet and they have this whole like world going on.
And like things where like it's like even if it's just like starts out like a hunting contract, like a Witcher contract, you're like, okay, I'm gonna track some footprints. And it turns out, like, oh, it's this horribly tragic thing, and there's this thing's happening, and oh, it's actually not monsters, it's people, and they were doing this, like, weird human trafficking thing, and now you got to go back to the village and figure out how they're getting them out. Like, there's so much...
Best quests of the last decade.
Or, like, the side quests where, like, you start out by trying to figure out where this guy's daughter, or, like, wife went, and in the end, you're, like, resurrecting a dead, like, prematurely born child to carry it through the like phantoms trying to kill. I mean, it just goes places.
I think the world helps.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The world where it's like, and it's the same as like with the book to some degree. It's a little different, but like it's a world where like basically like fairy tales are real and like, but they're all like based on like horrible things that are even more horrible than the original horrible things in the fairy tales, and it's like you recognize a lot of elements from like classic folklore, especially Eastern European folklore because it's made in Poland. A nice reminder many times that Eastern European folklore is crazy.
Yeah.
And they make it their own, but they still keep it recognizable. Like you recognize like little things and like it's in the books as well. Like one of the first stories, he meets what is basically the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. But it turns out that he loves being a beast, and like he's convinced the local villagers.
He doesn't want to change back.
No, yeah, he convinces the local villagers to just sort of deliver a nubile young girl to him every few years, and like they just sort of hang out, and she cooks for him, and like sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't. It's like and Geralt's like, I should probably kill you because you're a monster. And then, like, he says, I don't remember what the guy said, but he says something that gives away. It's like, oh, there's one I didn't like, so I killed her or something. He's like, oh, you're a monster, gotta kill you.
Yeah.
But it's like those twists on sort of like these, the idea is sort of like this is the horrible real life event that the fairy tale is based on,
right?
And it's come down,
and that your parents didn't
through.
read out. They skipped those pages in the book. Yeah.
So stuff like that is great, and like but it's also got a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's got
it's got levity.
Geralt's very funny. Like even this trailer where like it's called if these events don't happen in the game, this trailer, but it is mentioned in the game when you run into Lambert later. He's like, I heard about that. You said like he's like. You only kill monsters. I am killing monsters. He's like, I don't know. It's just what popped into my head. There's a thing late in one of the DLCs where it's sort of like wrapping the whole game up, and like at some point it says something about like he seems like he could get lost on the Witcher's path forever or something, and Geralt just looks right at the camera and grins at you, and you're like, it's like there's some great stuff in there.
It's a great game. I mean, it's also hard to find faults with.
Right. And the lead writer of the best quests in the game is the narrative director for Cyberpunk.
Yep. Which bodes very well.
I mean, that is what I'm the most excited about Cyberpunk is like the people that made these quests and made these characters are going to be playing this new universe, and who the hell knows what we're going to get from that.
Yep.
So I played through this game 3 times. Didn't intend to play through it the third time. Actually, I just loaded up an Xbox One X to see what it looked like with HDR.
And away you went.
There it goes. There we go.
Not going to happen with the Switch version, I'm guessing.
No, I will probably never play that.
I don't think that one's going to.
If the Switch version for some reason one day came down to it was a Black Friday deal where it was like $10
or whatever,
I might get it just to keep my Witcher collection complete because I do have a little shelf that's just Witcher stuff. I have a lot of versions of the games, but yeah, I didn't bother with that just because I've already done it 3 times and they all looked better than that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you would. All right, it's time for my number 1 pick for the best game, in my opinion, of the last 10 years. I think people right now have no idea what game I'm going to pick.
I wouldn't have guessed this.
Actually, very quickly, how about a couple of you guys in chat guess what you think my number 1 game is going to be? 4 games I've already taken off the table. So very quickly, type into chat just your guess off the top of your head what you think I'm going to pick for number 1. Because I'm just curious.
I was pretty surprised.
Yeah. Minecraft from Fire Native. Shenmue 3 from Erebus Jones. Now they're making
Bloodborne.
Now you making jokes.
Now you're just making
SJD Swan.
Now you're making the jokes.
They're picking all the games I hate.
Sleepy Dogs.
NHL 94. Okay, that's about 20 years old, but whatever. Dead or Alive Extreme 3. I'll say this. You guys are awesome because you actually do remember all the games that I hate. Like, you guys are like encyclopedic in your brains. You remember like every game I said I didn't
Horizon Zero Dawn's another game I was sad to not be able to get on there, but it just...
Okay,
Horizon... It would be in the top 10.
Horizon Zero Dawn, Superman 64, haha, texture glitch, Zelda, I guess he's assuming Breath of the Wild. Black Ops 4, that's not a bad pick. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, that's over 10 years old.
That's a long,
very old. That's too old.
3 came out with a GameCube, so yes.
Uncharted 2, GTA 5, the ending for Mass Effect 3.
Was Uncharted 2 this decade?
I don't believe so.
I don't think it was.
It's close. But
right on the edge.
But also, Ed Rock the Truth. Like, I don't know if you've been following me for a long time, but you might be because Uncharted 2 was a very heated discussion on invisible walls at one point between, I think it was Marcus and I. So he may be remembering that discussion where I defended Uncharted 2 to like the death. Bayonetta, Luigi.
Uncharted 2 is definitely my favorite in that series.
Uncharted came out in October of 2009. Yep, so it just slid it. It's as good a pick as League of Legends, because League of Legends is a couple months over. Okay, Fallout New Vegas. All right, so those were all your choices. I will say this. One of you did get it right. One person did guess right. And that person was Zelectro when he chose Grand Theft Auto 5. So GTA 5 is my favorite game of the last 10 years. Reviewed this at Game Trailers. Think I gave it a 9.7, I think is what it came out to ultimately, which I guess in the end, I actually gave it a score lower than Super Mario Galaxy 2. But when I was working on this list, I mean, I don't even take into consideration the fact that it's the best-selling game ever, or that it's released on 2 platforms and it's the best-selling game on both platforms. That was irrelevant to me. My pick for this was just purely based upon what games I thought were the best over the last 10 years. What I realized while putting together B-roll for this is that Grand Theft Auto 5 offers more flexibility than I believe any other franchise will ever be able to offer. Because of its setting, because of its parodic nature. Is that a word? How do you say parody, but...
Parodic.
Parodic?
Yeah.
Is that right? Because of its parodic nature, you can just do anything. Like, there's missions in this game where it starts out, you're riding like a scooter. Then you stop somewhere, and then you hop in a cop car, and you become the cops. And you pull somebody over, and you steal their supercar. And then you drive the supercar to this place. Like, because it's set in present day with modern technology, and it's snarky, and it's open world, and its tech is awesome, the game, you never know what's going to be around the next corner. I looked at all the other games that I played. I would say Mario Galaxy kind of falls into that category as well, where it's just everything is almost unexpected. Like, you play a game like a God of War or a Skyrim or a Witcher, you kind of know what you're going to get. It's like either a medieval setting, and there's people who are having problems with their crops or their animals, or some dude who stole from them. In this game, it can be anything. And what I found is I started looking back across like all the other games that have come out over the last 10 years, and I was like, I can't think of another game that allows me to do that and does it so well. Also, I would argue another game that wraps up exactly when it should, yet it's still huge. You are getting your money's worth for it. And then you start thinking about like GTA Online, which when the game came out was kind of an afterthought. It wasn't even there at launch. And then it came along a little later, and it wasn't exactly what people kind of hoped or thought at first. And now it's just this behemoth. Like, Rockstar has kind of mastered the art of the game as a service with this game. I just think we're going to see shadows of this game in other games for a long... We already have been. And we're going to continue to see the shadows of this game for a long time to come. There's a reason, and it isn't why I picked it, but there is a reason why this game is the best-selling game ever. Because it can resonate with such a wide group of people. Like, even my wife enjoyed watching me play this game. And there are very few games where I can say that it hit her on that level, where she just enjoyed watching me play it. The humor is something that we don't get in enough games anymore. Period. Like, there just aren't enough games that have humor. Like, a lot of games you'll have a joke here or there, but this game made me belly laugh over and over and over again. I just feel like it offers, even though open world games are like kind of passé now, it still, to this day, offers stuff that other open world games aren't doing. So I love the heck out of it when it came out. I still love it. I loved firing it back up to play it, to grab footage. It's almost 10 years old. It doesn't feel dated to me at all. I think a little bit kind of in the same vein as The Witcher 3. Some of the combat isn't where I would hoped it would be, and I'm still completely flummoxed as to why Rockstar cannot nail combat. Like, even in Red Dead, I still felt like it wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be. I don't know why Rockstar doesn't just hire somebody to handle that for them. It's like the missing link
It has to be a choice at this point.
You think?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they try to keep it so simple so that just anybody can play it and it's not too complicated. I don't know.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is very complicated. Like, there's so much
The
weird
game
shit
itself
you can
was?
do.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. In this, not so much, though. This is a little bit more pure. This is like get in the car, go on your mission, deal with a bunch of crazy people. The writing is great. The voice acting is great. All the production values are all top notch. I cannot wait for Grand Theft Auto 6. Even though this game,
gonna.
Yeah, I know I am. And even though this game came out so long ago, it is still my pick for the best game of the last 10 years. So there you go, Grand Theft Auto 5. One person did guess. I honestly didn't think anybody would. Because, again, it's been away so long. And we've talked negatively about GTA Online a bunch of times on the show, which probably threw a couple people off. But yeah, that's my pick for the best game of the last decade. We have one more bow to put on this package before we move on.
I don't think GTA 5 would make my top 20.
Really?
No,
Wow.
I was horribly disappointed in it. Although I did play it twice, but not 3 times. 3 times.
That was the deal breaker.
My main thing is I think it's very obvious to me that they cut all the heist stuff out of the middle of the game
To sell it
to make it a
DLC stuff.
Like, they spend so much time introducing you to like building your team and doing planning the heist and do all that, and they never do it again.
No, you're right. Yeah, that's true.
Like it's
I'd agree
so
with that.
obviously. It's like that's the main thing I think I would disagree with is the idea that it ends when it should, because that game clearly was supposed to have a big middle chunk where you're doing heist stuff, and it just all went away.
Yeah, but I can't know that. But I would guess that I would find the game bloated if that was there.
Maybe, but I also think I feel like that would be fun to get lost in for a long time, and then like as long as you maybe had the opportunity to like say, okay, enough is enough, let's do the final heist after a certain point. I also feel like Franklin gets lost about halfway through the story. Like they don't really do much more with him.
I can
after
see
a
that
while.
Perspective.
Because Trevor and Michael Michael's the main character.
Michael's
really.
the main character. Trevor brings up the rear. He's kind of like the primary character for the last.
Well,
act.
Trevor's the kick in the rear. Trevor's
Yeah.
the thing that causes everything to happen.
Yeah.
Like he's the motivator.
Yeah.
But Franklin, I feel early on, Franklin's very like a viewpoint character almost to see how crazy these people are.
Yeah.
But then like you just sort of move away from Franklin. He doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, he was kind of like the litmus test. Like you needed the straight guy to realize how insane these other people are.
Like you needed someone grounded to be able to say like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, like.
But again, just the fact that there's a game that's doing that is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most games narratively do not.
And it is still pretty impressive. Like, you forget, obviously this is the updated, re-release version, but like this is a last gen game.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's been out this long and it still left a big impression on me. So GTA 5, my game of the last decade. We have one more thing to tighten up, and that is Matt and I are both going to pick our favorite platform from the last 10 years. This was really tough because there's a lot of things to take into consideration. I'm going to hold off on explaining kind of my mental process until after you've made your pick. So what is your pick for the best platform of the last 10 years?
My pick is still the Xbox 360 because I think Xbox really nailed the online environment better than any console before or since. They're still playing catch up with this thing in terms of interface and online features, really. And this is the system that I played the most online stuff with and had like kind of a not regular group playing with and like did all that with, and it just all went away in the new generation. Not in part because people like got different lives and moved away and it wasn't really the same group dynamic anymore, but also because the people that were there almost every night playing on the 360 with me didn't like playing on the new systems because the chat didn't work, or we kept dropping out, or we wasted 40 minutes trying to get everybody to be able to hear each other in party chat, and like this didn't work, and now that didn't work. Now the server's down. Like it was just not the same experience. And while online is not and multiplayer is not very important to me now, it was then. And like of all, I think the eras of gaming I'm going to look back on and miss, it's probably that 360 era where I had that regular group playing like all this stuff with, because that's just never going to happen again. Like you're never going to be that age again. You're never going to have that situation again. You're never going to have those kinds of games again. And that's that.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
So it's kind of irrelevant to like technology or what games were even released. The point was like I had the best time
culturally
on a nightly basis. Yeah, culturally on a nightly basis playing on the 360.
Yep.
And I would argue that a lot of the games I have on, look at my top 5 here, I would consider probably all those games better than anything I had on 360.
Yeah.
with that maybe 2 or 3 exceptions. I mean, obviously Mass Effect 2 was a 360 game, but like, you know, when I look back fondly on the things that, you know, it was a less impersonal hobby on the 360. That would probably be what I'd say about it.
I would say, okay, should I make my pick first before I?
Yeah.
Okay, so my pick is actually the PlayStation 4. We kind of had a discussion about this, like what's the best console ever, and we both agreed it's probably the Xbox 360. And that was only a couple months ago. I think we discussed
not too
that.
long ago.
So you're probably wondering, Shane, why aren't you picking it? And I guess I took this a little more literal.
Well, I also like.
I agree with everything you just said.
I recognize that, like, when we're talking about this decade, we're talking about the kind of the last 3 years of the 360. Like,
see, that's what I'm saying. I took it more literal. So I literally looked at the last 3 years of the 360, and then basically the whole lifespan of it's not a fair comparison, but that's kind of how I looked at it.
To me, it was more about the shifting of the era, the end of what the 360 was, and the dawning of this new thing. I mean, I would probably argue, as a whole, this generation is the best generation.
It probably is. So I started doing some comparisons.
The PlayStation 4's library is absurd.
Yeah, that's what I realized. So I started doing some research because I basically felt the same exact way you did. Like, the nostalgia culturally for me with the Xbox 360 is almost overwhelming at times. It like almost makes me feel emotional because it was like the best part of my career, my time at G4, the end of my time at G4, all my time at Game Trailers, all the people I was working with and met during that time, just amazing. And you're right, all those people playing games with them every night on 360, it was just, it's something I'll never forget.
It's kind of like how I talk about how, like, you know, one of the reasons I was upset and still so upset about my cat dying was she was with me through all those same years.
Yeah.
Through my late 20s, all my 30s, the G4 era, the Tech TV era, all, you know, that period of time, all that stuff, that period, you know, and no matter how much you get another, if I get another cat that I love, whatever, it's never going to be the cat that lived through that with me. And the 360 is kind of a similar thing. The 360 is part of that era that can't really be replicated.
Yeah, it's like, you know, during the 360 era, my career took off. Like, just so many, I got married. Like, just so many good things happened to me during the Xbox 360 era. And so I absolutely feel you. But when I started looking at it, and I'm like, the last couple years of the 360 were not great. You got to realize that, like, 2010 had already been out 4 years. Like, it's at the end of its run by the time you get to 2010.
5 years.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, it'd be 5 years. So it was already being phased out, basically.
Yeah.
The last couple years.
It lasted 3 more years.
Yeah.
It was a.
No, it did. But then I start thinking about everything I've got on PlayStation 4 because we're getting the whole life cycle of the PlayStation 4. For me, the PlayStation 4 wins because of the way it fell into the years. I would still say probably in my heart, I care about the Xbox 360 more. But then I started digging through the numbers. And to date, there are 1,200 games available for the Xbox 360. To date. There are already 1,100 games available for PlayStation 4. So to your point about, oh my God, like the software has just fallen down like the rain, you're absolutely right. We're only in, what, the 4th year of PS4 now? 5? Is this the 5th year?
No, this is 6 years.
Oh, this is 6?
Came out in 2013.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, 6 years. So 360 had an extra 3 years on PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 4 already has as many games. And then I start thinking about the exclusives for each one. Like, those last 3 years on 360, that was when we were really in the Gears, Halo, Forza. Gears, Halo, Forza.
The other thing about 360 is, like, there were a lot of multi-platforms that might as well have been exclusives because of how badly they ran on PS3.
PS3. You're right. That's true.
So, like, it was just sort of like there's only one choice. You know, the PS3 was almost a Nintendo console.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, I play the Sony exclusives on this.
That's pretty much all I did.
It.
Yeah, that's the way it was for me, too. I never really built a relationship with my PlayStation 3.
No.
Never. I played all my multi-plat stuff on 360, and I used my PS3 to play
360
Sony
or
exclusives.
PC. Like, that was. I have almost nothing multiplayer. If I could play it on another platform, I did.
Yep. So I would not say that PlayStation 4 is my favorite platform of all time, but just in that 10-year period from 2010 to today, I feel like it was the best console. So there you go. The last decade in video games, according to GameFace.
Are you playing Knack? Get out of here. Yeah, I didn't even know this, but I was digging through my PlayStation 4 because I added an external hard drive because I was kept running out of room.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I can reinstall. That's why I reinstalled God of War, because I'm like, I got room to put God of War on. I can play that again. I was going through my my uninstalled library. I own Knack. I didn't even know. I don't even know why I have Knack.
You probably got it from.
Are you playing Knack? Get out of here.
Was it ever a part of PlayStation Plus?
It probably.
I think it was.
I cannot imagine there's another way I would have ended up.
I don't think you ever bought it. I'll
No.
say that. I don't think you ever plugged down cash for it. But anyway, there you go. The last decade in video games.
Although, wow, like that launch video there, not tremendously good in helping our case.
No, it wasn't.
It's like Knack and Killzone Shadowfall, not,
it
not
wasn't a good
illustrating
launch.
what we're talking about.
I mean,
really.
PlayStations very rarely have good launches.
That's true.
I mean, their launch lineups are always kind of crap.
Yeah, I mean, it was better than 3's.
Yeah. Where you got a fireworks simulation.
Yeah, fireworks simulation and.
Oh wait, that's PS2, wasn't it?
It resist. Yeah, Fanavision was PS2, but you had you'd Resistance. That wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But the thing I got assigned to review for the PlayStation 3 launch was that stupid Gundam game, which is still one of the worst things of that gen, I think.
There's some people that like Knack. For instance, Zakalia Seldom in our chat says Knack is a good game. There's people who like it. I'm not one of them, but
Nothing's so terrible that somebody on the internet won't love it.
Yep. All right, we got to move on because we have about, and I didn't think we'd be able to make the full time. We're going to make it easily. At this point, I'm going to have to rush through these last handful of topics to make it by the end. All right, next up is Shenmue 3. We've talked about this game ad nauseum on GameFace over the last month. Matt and I both kind of bounced off it. I still have not gone back to it. I was saying earlier, remember how I said...
I haven't actually turned it on since we talked about it either.
So remember how I was saying, I paid for it with my own money and I regret it. And you were like, oh, we'll just go trade it in. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, Matt. Oh, there's no trading in Shenmue 3, my friend.
Oh, no?
Oh, no, the price has hit rock bottom. You can buy it used for like $25 at GameStop. You can buy it new for $30 from GameStop.
Wow. Is that only because of the sales, or is it?
No, it's just they bought a ton of them and they can't sell them. So there's no value left in Shenmue 3. I'm just keeping it. So maybe someday I'll return to it. Probably not.
It can serve as a warning.
But the bottom line is that the game has tanked financially and horribly tanked. I don't know that it matters all that much because they already got the money to make the game.
Yeah, that's what I'd say is I can't imagine 90% of the people who wanted this game didn't already put their money in for the Kickstarter.
Right, yeah. But I mean, the funny part is...
But it's bizarre that so
was
many
only
copies...
$3 million or whatever.
But it's bizarre that so many copies ship to retail.
I know.
It's everywhere.
It is.
I thought this game would actually be mildly difficult to find. I thought it would be out like Greedfall or something.
They didn't market it.
Where
I'll
it's
say
there
that.
if you're looking for it, but there's 2 of them. But I was at Best Buy on Sunday, and it was just there's stacks of them.
Yeah.
Why would you think this game would? I mean, even
what do you
as a
mean?
fan,
Why? There was people flipping backwards out of their chairs when it was announced. All that stuff adds up. Those buyers at GameStop see that
If you're
crap.
stocking your shelves based on Huber's reaction, you deserve what you get.
Well, they can't really stack shelves anymore based on pre-orders because no one pre-orders anymore. That used to be how they made their orders. They'd look at how many. That's why publishers used to care so much about pre-orders because that determined how many copies GameStop would buy from the publisher. So now that nobody pre-orders anything anymore because why? They don't have that barometer anymore to kind of know how a game's doing. There obviously are some services out there. Adam has a service that should help them with that kind of stuff. There's stuff like Game Tracks from GameSpot that should help. But inevitably, you're going to get fooled every once in a while.
In this case, you could have asked the gardener.
Or you could have asked us. I'll take $30,000
Even as a giant
consulting
fan
fee.
of Shenmue, I could have told you this was not going to burn up the charts or anything.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that it didn't sell.
No.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I kind of suspected it wasn't going to sell because, like you, I knew that the people who really wanted it paid for the Kickstarter. They already put their skin in the game. Here's what I really want to talk about, though, because I don't think the fact that it's not selling great is a surprise to either one of us after we basically trashed the game on GameFace. Me more than you, I'll admit. I definitely disliked it a lot more than you did.
Yeah.
You actually found some redeeming value in it.
Yeah, but the fact that
I struggle to find any.
The fact that I disliked it at all is notable.
It's a pretty big deal.
Because I was a big... And I, on the one of the comments in one of the articles on Sifted, I did say it blows.
Yeah.
Like I do not think it's good.
Yeah.
But I think there's a couple of things you could fix that would make me think it was fine.
That you'd want to play it
Yes.
and finish it. Well, over the last week, it appears that the Shenmue Defense Force has come out to defend the game, saying that frankly that I'm wrong, that the game isn't terrible. I think they're crazy. I think that with a lot of art, quote unquote, it is open to interpretation. One person can look at something and say, that's great. Another person can look at something and say, I hate that, it's terrible. Paintings, music, I can go on and on. There are certain elements of video games that either are broken or they're not broken. And this game has just dozens of elements in it that 99 days out of 100 are considered broken by every gamer on the planet. There are things wrong with this game that are objectively wrong, that just they're not the ideal way to do things for a reason, because we've learned over the last 20 years that nobody wants to consume gaming or games that have those sort of features in them. So to me, using their art, and so nobody's right or wrong when determining whether a game is good or bad, sure. The story in the game, okay, I'll give you that. One person can read a story and think it's the greatest thing they ever read. Another person can read it and think it's trite. I give you that. There are certain technical elements of video games that are bad, and there's no debating whether they're bad or not. It's accepted logic that certain things have been rejected by players for the last 20 years, and they don't want them because they feel they're bad and a detriment to enjoying a game. And Shenmue 3 is loaded with them. Loaded with them. This game has so many parts of it that we rail every other game for. And now all of a sudden, the people who want to support this game say, oh, we got to ignore that now because it's Shenmue.
Funny thing is, everything you just said could also be applied to Death Stranding.
Yeah, I guess it could, actually. We have a lot of whatever Defense Force going on right now.
Well, the thing that I think is weird about the Defense Force on this game, speaking as someone who in an alternate timeline probably is part of that Defense Force, if there's one game I think even the fans of acknowledge fully it's not a universal thing. I think going back 20 years, even when the first game came out, everybody was just like, you should play it, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they're trying to do, but it's not for everyone. If you're not enthralled by opening capsule toys and playing Hang On, while you walk around and check what time it is while you're looking for sailors, this is not going to set your world on fire. And it's a little bizarre to me that people are freaking out about people not liking this game when the most reliable prediction I could make about this game is that a lot of people were not going to like it.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to be one of those people, but here we are.
I didn't think I would be either. I didn't expect it to be in my hot list for Game of the Year for 2019 or anything. But I like Shenmue. I have been a fan for 20 years.
I'll be honest.
This isn't me someone who has a grudge against Sega or Yu Suzuki or
Shenmue.
But
I'll be honest. If you give me an option to turn off the stamina system, I will probably like it just fine.
They may get to a place where
that is my biggest issue. Is I feel like I'm being penalized for existing.
You gotta wonder. Look, if you're someone who's making games, and maybe
Ryo's a young guy and his metabolism moves fast, but it ain't that fast. Come on.
You gotta imagine if you're making games, and let's say you ship your first game, and it gets reviewed like every other game, where they take certain things to task that are just accepted as poor implementation or poor gameplay or whatever, or just technical issues. And your game gets hammered for that. And then this game comes out, and all of a sudden everybody wants to apologize for that crap. What the hell? There's no logic to me.
Like I said, I think a lot of the stuff, my main problems with the game are the two biggest changes to the game. Not the fact that it hasn't progressed in 20 years, the fact that they added a useless stamina system that ruins everything about what was fun to play in the old games, and the fact that the fighting system can't be Virtua Fighter anymore because it's not Sega, but the thing they replaced it with is a big mushy mess.
Someone in chat just said you're freaking out because people like it. That's not what's happening at all.
If you fix those two things, I would be pretty much fine with the fact that the presentation is essentially Dreamcast era circa 2002, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I would be like, oh, you're just throwing fully back as though you're picking up exactly where it left off as if nothing ever changed. So if you were ever to play these games all together, the presentation style would all sort of flow. My problem is like that's the irony. Is like a lot of people are complaining that that didn't like it, like you did, or saying like, well, it's archaic and it's terrible and da da da. I'm like, I get why it's archaic. My problem is that you change things about it.
Yeah.
Like I have the opposite complaint. I'm like, if you just did Shenmue 2 again, I'd have been fine. But the fact that they added this stupid stamina system and all this needless inventory juggling and all this, that eventually becomes like meaningless anyway.
Are you basically saying that you expected the game to fall short in a number of areas?
No, I'm saying I expected it to be Shenmue 3. Like I didn't expect it to be a modern game, basically. Like I don't know how else to put the fact that all the presentational stuff has exactly the same foibles and flaws as Shenmue 1 and 2 is not a shock to me. Is
to me
is what I expected it to be.
Absolutely, it is.
That is a creative choice.
I still don't believe that.
I don't think there's a way to say it isn't, because the Unreal Engine 4 doesn't cause these things, but you had to choose these things.
I think that's just the only way he knows how to make the game. I don't think that it was a conscious choice. I think it's
absolutely a conscious choice. I will bet you anything.
There's no way it's a conscious choice to make you take off your shoes, load a room. Step up on a platform.
I don't know what
step
that's
down on
about.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about, though. These are things about this game that nobody can argue are crap.
But I'm talking about, like...
No game has that. Just Shenmue 3. And it's not because it's Shenmue. It's because the developers just aren't good enough. They don't know how to make a modern video game. They know how to make Shenmue.
Yeah, I get it. I've heard it many, many times now. What I'm saying is, presentationally, like the fact that there's like the sound editing on the dialogue is like someone working on like a too slow VHS dub machine, that's a choice. Like they chose to put the weird pauses between the dialogue in back and forth.
Do you think they intentionally recorded god-awful voice acting?
They must have, because it's exactly the same.
I don't believe that.
The guy who does Ryo's voice, if you see him in the like the behind the scenes stuff, he talks like a normal human being.
Well, he's playing a character. He's playing Ryo.
But they are getting these performances intentionally. There is no other way to explain it. Absolutely. Of course it is. I mean, even if you go back, I mean, this is the same dub crew. He was. I don't know about the dub crew on this fully, but the old dub crew for Shenmue 1 and 2 was an English dubbing service in Japan, mostly made out of English speakers from outside of Japan were living in Japan. It's the same dub service that did Iron Chef when that came here. Like, when they switch to when they're doing the stuff for Iron Chef, and the guy from like the floor goes "Koi-san," like and jumps in. That's his like. The guy who lives with them is the other guy you spar with in the first game, like the weird loser kid who that's the same guy. Like that's, and like you listen to Iron Chef, it's just the same sort of quality of VO that's going on. There's a certain sound to it. There's a certain sound. It's related to the sound of anime dubbing, which I think has progressed way more than this, obviously, but at the time was not all that far off of what Shenmue was doing. They are going for that as a style. Is that a wise thing to do? Not if you want to sell it to anyone other than who already kickstarted your game.
You already paid for it.
I was kind of I admit I wasn't expecting like the dialogue to not match up with itself. Like I think Jim Sterling even used the clip, like one of that first conversations.
Where that's wrong.
Where you're like, I'm looking for you, Mr. Yuen,
yeah,
and the other guy says, no, I haven't.
Yeah, see, that was not on purpose, man. The game was not broken.
That was an error, but I'm talking
poor job done by the developers.
But that's one error.
It happens all the time. That happened to me. And I only played this game like 5 hours. That happened to me at least like 35 or 40 times.
No, it happened.
Where they play the wrong clip.
It happened maybe 30.
This is insane.
It happened maybe 3 times.
This is insane. And to get back to what someone said in chat about I'm pissed off that someone's enjoying the game, I'm not. I'm glad they spent the money on the game and that they feel like they're getting it, what they wanted. I don't know that I necessarily believe it. I think they may have deluded themselves into liking it more than maybe they should. My argument is that people are coming at me and other people who do not like the game and saying we're just flat out wrong when there are completely obvious issues with this game that anybody can see. That's
I mean,
it.
I don't see.
If you enjoy it, that's fine. I don't care. I'm glad you're getting your money's worth.
I mean, I don't see how you play this game and not acknowledge that it is.
Yeah, I don't either.
And I do believe, with the exception of obvious errors like I'm looking for Mr. UN. No, I haven't. Like that's something got crossed there. But you could say the same thing that assume it's an error that everybody spends 2 seconds waiting between lines. But that's an obvious choice because that's how the old games were. So now we're doing it again with this one. I don't see how even if you enjoy this game, and it's not like I don't enjoy it when it's like when I don't have to deal with a stupid stamina system, when I'm just like talking to people and like looking at things, like that's Shenmue to me, I get it. But I don't understand how you could play that and even if you enjoy it, not think like, yes, someone who is accustomed to modern games is going to think this is bizarre. Like it's because it is.
It is bizarre.
I mean, it was pretty weird at the time, you know?
But it was groundbreaking at the time, which
to some degree,
endeared it to me.
I would argue that by the time the Xbox version of Shenmue 2 came out, it was already behind the times.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But it was charming.
Broke the ground for a lot of franchises to come.
Yeah. And I can see,
and it was fresh and new when it came out. Now,
I think people took a lot of not necessarily lessons from Shenmue, but it definitely like gave people ideas like, oh, I could do that better, and then they did.
And they did. Yeah.
And like I kind of appreciate the idea of wanting to make it a complete throwback the way they did, but at the same time, would I argue with playing a version of this game that was done with modern sensibilities? No, I wouldn't argue with that at all. I would play that as well. I'd probably play that better because in that scenario, maybe they would have made a better stamina system.
They would have made it a lot better. They could have made a lot better everything. Everything in this game could be improved drastically. I cannot think of a single thing in this game that was nailed. Can you?
The music.
Okay.
I think the music's very good.
Okay, I'll give you that because I actually...
That's a cop-out, though, because music's a totally different animal.
Like, I don't like the music in this game. I like the main Shenmue theme because it's literally burned into my brain, and when I'm 80 and dying on my bed, I'm going to be, like, whistling it. But the rest of the music, and again, it's subjective, I did not think was good. Like, I didn't find it catchy. My wife told me to turn down the TV. She's like, I feel like I'm in feudal Japan and someone's about to, like, waterboard me. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll turn down the music. Like, I did not think the music was good, but, you know, again, music especially is, like, a lot of opinion. So I'm just going to say I didn't like it. I'm not going to say someone's wrong for actually enjoying it. But I cannot think of a single thing this game nails. Not one.
I mean, it nails Shenmue.
I guess it kind of does.
I mean that's it. It is what it is. Like, there's probably no game this year that's more aptly described.
And again,
that.
I'm totally fine with that. Look, if people, this is what they expected and they got it, I'm really happy for them. But to go at people who are critical of this game and say that they're wrong, that's wrong. Like, that's insane. This game has blatant flaws and just myriad flaws.
You're having a lot of. I mean, that's happening with Death Stranding.
You're right.
As well.
The same thing is happening with Death Stranding. Lots of people making lots of excuses for Hideo Kojima.
And even we got another subject coming up that's a very similar situation, although it's only one person making the complaint. But like, it's just sort of, it's like, you know, I feel like you're constantly stuck in this thing where like, it's like the old Penny Arcade strip where they said, like, you know, Kevin Smith said that Jersey Girl isn't doing well with critics because it's not for critics.
Right.
And they're like, I didn't even know you could do that.
You can't.
And like then that was when
that's the point. You can't.
It was a Twispin Catsby showed up. There was just like these crazy characters. What does that weigh? Ham. And they're like I bet you'd like to criticize that, but you can't. It's not for you. You know. Like I feel like that's what's happening
That is
here.
What's happening.
It's like it's, you know.
We got to move on though. We have so many more topics and we got like 20 minutes. Up next. New PS5 dev kit photos just came out. Did you guys see these? I tweeted them the other day.
I saw the stacks of them.
Oh, you saw stacks of them? I didn't see that, actually.
There's like a stack, like a couple of stacks of, which I guess that's the point, is like of that weird design, is so you can stack them and they still have air cooling.
I missed that photo, actually. Wow. Yeah. We have another one we can put up right now, Jared. So a lot of people...
I've seen that one too, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people saw the patents for this, some of the weird blurry cell phone photos that could or could not have been legit. It's not. It's legit. These are the PlayStation 5 dev kits. When this photo first came out, people blew up the display on the right-hand side, and they thought that there was some code in there that showed that it was the Demon Souls was being remade.
No, that was a joke.
Well, as it turns out, it was just the MAC address of the console. So people will look into a lot of things.
No, that was the guy who did that first. It was a joke, and then people just picked it up and ran with it. Okay.
So he knew right away.
He knew what it was. Yeah, he knew it wasn't Demon Souls, but he decided to put that on Twitter because he knew people would fall for it.
And they did. and fall for it.
Masterful troll.
And fall for it, they did. The DualShock 5 is sitting there.
Yeah.
I think you can see.
It's a thick boy.
You can see the differences.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not blatant, but you can see them.
But it's there. Like it's a thicker controller.
And you can tell the sticks are shorter. It's just beefier, it looks like.
Yeah.
It looks a little bit more like solid state Xbox stuff, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like maybe they're going to put some more money into their controllers, which is good because
I feel like it looks like there's a higher ridge on the edges of the D-pad too.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like it, which I'm also
I'm okay with. Yeah, it's good.
What are you thinking, Matt? Do you think this is what the PS5 is going to look like?
Of course not.
I don't know, man. I'm really starting to wonder.
I had several people, including my brother-in-law, works IT, explain like this is purely so they can stack them.
Really?
This is so you can stack a bunch of them,
and they never
you still have airflow.
Interesting.
I wonder the final version will not look like that.
I wonder why they haven't done that with prior dev kits.
I don't know.
Maybe this one just gets super hot.
It might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. It's probably specific to whatever they're doing here.
Don't you think it's weird that they patented the dev kit though?
I mean, if they think it's a cool design or it's a functional design they designed specifically to handle this, I can see that.
That's weird, though, don't you think?
It's not going to look like that, I promise.
I would hope not. I mean, look, it wouldn't keep me from buying it if it did look that way.
Well, there's no reason. There's no way you'd try to sell anyone on putting that on their, because people like to put things on top of stuff that's already on top of their entertainment center thing. Whatever. It's going to be a flat top, I promise.
It's just is strange. Like, I've never seen anything like this.
It's also not going to have a screen on the side, and it's not going to have a slot. I mean, these are pure dev kits. I mean, normally you get them in just a little box, but for whatever reason, they decided this time.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, why? Like, why do you set up a manufacturing line to create that form factor when you can just put it in a PC case? Like, that's why I'm having doubts.
Sony gonna Sony.
I guess. Like, I've never seen anything like this. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never seen a platform holder do this, which is why, for me, red flags are going up.
Red flags of what?
Of this could very well be like what
not a chance in hell. This is pure hardware design for what they're doing with a dev kit.
Very weird. And completely out of the ordinary.
I agree. Apparently
it would be idiotic to release a console.
Apparently not, like according to the people I know who work IT. Like, this is not a crazy design for this.
Well, no, I understand what you're saying. Like, if you're trying to cool something and you're going to stack them, absolutely.
And remember, we're not even supposed to see these. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we were going to see it because we pay attention to all the tiny little nerd details. But, like, the vast majority of the public's never going to see these things. Unless somebody on CNN decides it's a slow week. I mean, it's possible.
It's hard for me to understand why they would bother making something
elaborate. If there's, for whatever reason, there's a need to have a lot of them or a lot of them stacked, then that is a design you would use for that. I don't know.
Maybe they're going to use them for PlayStation Now.
I don't know.
I mean, didn't Saddam Hussein buy a bunch of PS2s to launch a missile?
Well, I mean, that's not entirely impossible if that's like one of the things they're building into it. I mean, they may have designed it specifically because Sony themselves has a reason they want to stack these things.
Yeah. That's what I said. They're going to use them for blades for PlayStation Now.
Not impossible.
It's really not, actually. That's about the only plausible reason why they would do that.
Yeah.
Chain them
together.
But
for whatever reason, they felt the need. They felt the need to have an air cooling solution for these things when you had them all on a large number of them stacked together.
Yeah, because usually, like that thing that you see on the right there with the book on top of it, that's normally like a dev kit.
Yeah, that's what a normal dev kit looks like.
It's very bizarre that they've made them this way, but maybe they're just trying to throw us off the trail or whatever.
I don't think they're doing this for misinformation. I think this is whatever they want to use these things for. They need that for it. That's why it's there.
Okay.
So I don't know what that means or what they're. I mean, you might be right about the PlayStation Now thing. Like that, that might be their new solution, similar to how Google Stadia wants to run the streaming thing. Who knows? These things are powerful. These things are fast.
I mean, they're supercomputers. Again, Saddam Hussein bought a bunch of PS2s to launch a missile.
And hey, that's a lot simpler than building some kind of PS5 shell inside an existing PC.
Well, you got to remember they had like all those sanctions against them, so they couldn't get like PCs into the country, but they could get consumer consoles.
They needed the emotion engine.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Anyway, I just want to show those to you guys, just in case you missed them. I did tweet them out, but I know a lot of you guys aren't dialed into Twitter. I'm not dialed into Twitter all day, every day, so thought you might want to check those out. I'm flummoxed. Like, I think 80% you're right. Like, there's no way in hell they would put out a console that looks like that. I've just never seen this happen before. So it's making me wonder.
That's a design that belongs in Iraq somewhere. It's
you're right. Yeah.
Not Iraq the country, but a rack of servers.
Yeah. As a blade, basically.
Yeah, basically, pretty much.
Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a game that kind of came and went without us discussing it all that much.
It's not out yet on consoles.
Yeah, but I mean, it did come out
That was
on
what
PC.
I was thinking I might play this week, and then we could talk about it next week.
That's not a bad idea.
'Cause I didn't play it on PC.
Yeah, and we're talking about Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey. This was the next game from Patrice Désilets, who left the Assassin's Creed team at Ubisoft to start his own studio. And it is a game where you literally play as primates who are in the middle of the evolving chain. And it's really about, I guess, evolving from ape to man. Or at least that's supposed to be the concept behind the game. The game did not get great reviews. It's sitting at a 64 right now on Metacritic, which isn't terrible. I mean, let's be honest. That's not bottom of the barrel.
No, it's kind of Shenmue level, though.
But when you're Patrice Désilets and
Right.
you're used to putting out a game that got a 9 or higher pretty much every freaking time, it's humbling. And that's basically what's been happening with Patrice over the last few weeks. His game came out. It didn't review well. It doesn't appear to be selling well, though you're right. It's coming out on consoles here pretty soon, and maybe it'll do a little better on consoles, though I kind of doubt it. But he's lashing out now. He's realizing the critical reception.
That's what I mean. It was one person.
Yep.
One person defense force.
And that's exactly what's been going on. And the excuses that he's been providing for why this game did not review well are insane. So he's basically saying that he believes that journalists didn't play the game. And I have literally an entire page of wacky quotes from him.
Didn't play the game at all, or didn't play it long enough?
He thinks both. Some of them didn't play it. Some of them didn't play it long enough, period.
I find that hard to believe. I mean, long enough, okay, but it's like, I guarantee you they put at least like 15 hours into the thing. And if you haven't grabbed me in 15 hours, you are Final Fantasy 13. And you are bad.
Here's the quote from Patrice. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to read like the ones that we're going to discuss. I'm used to having bigger numbers than that, so it's the elephant in the room. But people expected my studio of 35 people to ship a game that is really close to Assassin's Creed, and it's just not possible. We made some harsh decisions in order to ship the game, and we wanted it to be different. We know for a fact, listen to this, we know for a fact that some reviewers actually didn't play the game. It is part of our industry. They have to review games, and they have 15 of them to review in 1 week.
What week was that?
And sometimes they don't have time. And since Ancestors is so different, some of them went, I don't have time for this. Then he goes further. Désilets went further, suggesting some reviewers, quote, just invented some elements, unquote, of their reviews too, and insisted that the game's concept alone needs an hour, maybe 2, to be understood. And we know for a fact that some just invented some elements of the game, like there is no fire and you cannot ride any horses, even though one reviewer said, oh, it wasn't that great when you ride a horse.
What?
It's insane. Yes, my people are pissed, by the way, he added. So please don't take notes today as we talk, mainly because I don't know how to make a video game. What the hell is he talking about? Dude, he's lost his mind. Nobody ever reviews 15 games in a week.
No. Well, and also, like, if you were going to review 15 games a week and you knew you had no time for all of them and you had to, like, pick a few to not play and make up a review about, why would the one you picked to skip playing be the weirdest one?
Yeah,
like, why would it be the one that you know you couldn't make?
You couldn't make up stuff about.
Like,
you would have no idea.
could theoretically skip, like, playing a lot of, like, the new Tales of game.
Right.
And just sort of, like, turn in the generic
Whip it
anime
out,
JRPG review and sort of probably pass it. But the game where no one really knows how it works and can't figure out what you're supposed to do and now you're supposed to play and, like... This is the one game in that 15-game lineup in Fantasy World where you would definitely play this one because you knew you had to talk about the weird thing.
Yeah. Now, when he says it's a part of our industry, that is 1,000% incorrect.
Like, you're gonna have to
today.
Like, if you're gonna say stuff like that, you got to start naming names.
Now, I will say
frankly.
this: back, like the GameCube, PS2 era, there were a couple magazines that were caught reviewing games without playing them. Mm-hmm. That was a long time ago.
I mean, hell, when I got into the industry, I was shocked to find out that people didn't finish them before they reviewed them.
Well, I mean, every place I've worked, that was a mandate. That's why that's why I haven't written a lot of game evals over the last couple of weeks, because I'm trying to finish the games. I'm not going to write a game eval based on the first 10 or 15 hours.
I mean, when I complained about that early on, I was basically told, well, we pay like $150 a review, and you can't have someone play a 100-hour game for $150, so you're just going to have to deal with it.
No, you can, okay. And they do. And if they don't, you'll find somebody else who will do it, because there are thousands of people waiting in line to do it. Like, that's a biggest cop-out BS ever. But for Patrice,
but that was pretty much how it worked till you got there.
Really? That's the way it was at Tech TV before I got there?
For a couple of things.
Really?
Yeah. Like Shenmue. Was it Shenmue? It was some RPG. Not Shenmue. Suikoden.
Well, see,
but no, I reviewed Suikoden 3, and I did finish. I mean, one of the first reviews I ever did there was Ogre Battle 64, and I barely got it done on time because I finished it.
Oh, that thing was a beast.
It was endless.
Beast.
Endless.
Yeah.
Person of lordly caliber.
Talk about a game that's bloated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but then it wasn't until like months later, I'm like, and part of it was me just being like, I finished Ogre Battle 64. You fuckers have got to finish everything. But that was our freelancers. Is like it wasn't expected to get more than like 30 or 40 hours in sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I expected them to finish the games.
Yeah, that definitely changed.
I gave the work to somebody else. That's just the way it is. And the truth of the matter is, there are dozens of people waiting to get that work. So some people are like, I don't want to spend X number of hours to make money, playing video games. Some people will say, I get paid to play a video game. It's all about perspective and where you are. So, what do you think about this, Matt? I love Patrice, by the way. I mean, I've hung out with him countless times. I've interviewed him dozens of times. He's a great dude. He's very talented.
Oh yeah, but
he has lost his mind.
Yeah, this is if he really does have some kind of like evidence of this, like I'd like to see.
Yeah, you can't throw stuff like that out there without evidence, man. You can't just like indict an entire industry and say that's the way it is. People don't play the games; they just make up the reviews. Like, he knows that's BS. Like, he knows it. He's been in the industry so long. Like,
and it's just like, you make a game like this, you're taking a risk that people are not gonna take to it.
It's
basically.
like you make an ape, and he's supposed to like break up rocks, and you give him the same animation every time he does. Like, that's what we're talking about. That's why this game.
And if you die, you basically get reset.
Yeah,
and like it's. I mean, I haven't played it, but I read the reviews of the PC version, and like it didn't sound very fun.
No. And here's another thing I would argue.
I'd play it just to have something to talk about next week.
Right. Here's the other thing I would argue too, is that if you're talking about the people who have been reviewing games for a long time, this is the type of game they play. Yeah. Because it's different, and it's not the same thing they've been playing for the last 25 years. I think that's the biggest issue that I have with connecting with younger audiences. I'll be perfectly honest. It's because I've been playing these games for so long that stuff that may be new to a 12 or 13-year-old is just completely blasé to me. And I think that's something you have to consciously consider when you're evaluating games is, you know what? Maybe I'm starting to get a little jaded towards something, and I need to recognize that and maybe try to dial it back if I can. But that's not the case with this game. Any veteran games journalist, I guarantee you, was excited to boot this game up. Guaranteed. It's, at the end of the day, they didn't think the game was very good. That's the bottom line. Mm-hmm. Like, accept the truth and learn from it and move on, or just move on. Like, trying to throw the blame for your product's failure on the people who reviewed it is ludicrous, in my opinion. And this, by the way, has nothing to do with whether the game is good or bad or not. Like, I don't know. I haven't really played it. So, but it's irrelevant to what he
Take
said.
Take some of it to heart and maybe do what Hello Games did.
Right. Take it to heart and just go and double down and be like, okay, like, I hear you.
I mean, Hello Games has the advantage that their game sold very well.
Right. Yeah. And this one doesn't appear to have
I mean,
sold
this one
very
has
well
almost no hype behind it at all. Like, it's not. There's no marketing.
There's no marketing. I mean, it's...
Like, I don't know how the word was going to get out about this. Also, those apes look like they're made of clay.
They do. Didn't Deep Silver publish this as well? I think it did.
Okay.
And if that's the case, there's 2 games.
What
Shenmue.
a bundle with Shenmue 3 this would make.
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, maybe people should stop working with Deep Silver because they're not marketing their games. Mm-hmm. Like, and I know that was probably a part of the deal, was like, we'll give you X amount of dollars for marketing if you sign up with us. So look, they probably knew going in, like, what marketing they were or were not going to get. But man, at this point, Deep Silver published...
Chat saying it's private division.
Oh, wait. Ancestors is private division?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's 2K then, or Take-Two. Yeah. But it got no marketing either. And Private Division put out The Outer Worlds. Have you seen a lot of TV commercials for that?
Yeah, I saw a couple.
Yeah, I've seen a few.
Yeah.
But none for this. That's for sure. And I haven't seen any marketing whatsoever for Shenmue 3. None.
No, I haven't seen any.
I haven't seen, like, ads on websites for Shenmue 3.
Yeah, I haven't even seen, like, a bus stop.
No, let alone a TV commercial. Oh, God. Imagine if they actually put the money into that. But then it would be worse because then all these people would buy the game and they'd be like, what? What is this? Maybe they actually did it right. But, look, I love Patrice. Great dude. Crazy talented. He's way off the reservation on this one. Sometimes you just have to take the L. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Like, I'm not going to blame anybody else for the problems that Sifted has had.
At the same time,
it's me. Like,
maybe before he makes another game like this, he should consider changing his name to Hideo Kojima.
maybe people would accept it more.
Yes.
You might have people actually
Absolutely.
imagine if Kojima made this game.
There are people standing around saying that the Fetch Quest game, where you have to keep your balance more often than any other gameplay element, is the best thing they've played all decade.
Wow.
So,
I don't know how you review games for people like that.
being named,
How do you review a game?
being named Hideo Kojima gets you a huge pass on incredibly mundane things.
We've
so
known that. We've done that for a long time.
if you're going to make a weird game like that, just change your name to Kojima and you're good.
Or just have Kojima Productions
Yeah,
publish
have
it.
him call it a Hideo Kojima game and it'll be genius automatically.
And then he'll have to have his name 85 times in the first 2 minutes in the opening
I mean, I did
sequence.
go back and play a little more Death Stranding this week, which
Did
is more
you?
than I can say about Shenmue 3. I ended up taking a mission that I didn't realize wanted to load me down with 500 kilograms of boxes, and I had to, like, go steal a truck and, like, bring it back and load it. And the truck couldn't carry as much as I needed, so I had to, like, make 2 trips back and forth. And, like,
Good times.
And by the end of, like, that delivery, it had been, like, an hour.
Whoa.
I'd played, like, an hour, and I'm like, well, now I have to stop.
And I want to stop.
And I want to stop, yeah. I did
man.
build another road, though.
Oh.
I do love building
Maybe
roads.
someday I'll drive on that road, man.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure I honk as I...
Yeah, honk, and I'll get a like.
Oh, man. All right. We got to move on. We got a couple more topics still to get in before we run out of show time. Next up. Next couple topics are VR, actually. Mm-hmm. And one kind of leads into the other, which is why they're stacked in the way that they are. It was announced, well, not announced, but Phil Spencer said this week that Xbox Scarlet VR, no way. I mean, that's the Crib Notes version. That's me, like, disseminating it down to, like, a few words. His exact quote was, or quotes were, I have some issues with VR. It's isolating, and I think of games as a communal kind of together experience. I don't know where he's been gaming. We're responding to what our customers are asking for, and nobody's asking for VR. Nobody's selling millions and millions of VR units, he said. I think we might get there eventually, but yeah, that's not where our focus is. Smart or not to completely ignore VR with the next Xbox?
Probably smart.
You think it's smart?
Like,
Financially smart.
yeah, they got other people are dealing with that, and honestly, Microsoft has enough ground to make up as it is, and I don't think VR is going to put them over that edge. So yeah, I think focus on what the proven stuff. Focus on what works. Focus on diversifying your portfolio, and don't worry about the current new tech gimmick.
Here's what I would say. I would say absolutely do not develop your own VR HMD. Do not spend the money on R&D, manufacturing, marketing, all that other crap. But just make it compatible with Vive and Rift. That's it. That's all you have to do. Let them handle all the rest of it. Like,
I don't think that's how that works, though. Like, certainly not Vive. Like, Vive basically makes the headset and says, have fun. Like,
Yeah.
you have to someone has to do that on their end, on the software end. So I don't think that's a viable thing. I'm sure, like, I would say, like, keep up with it. Like, keep on, have some people paying attention to things. So if it becomes a thing that you would need to move on, you are agile enough to move on it. But right now, it's just irrelevant to the equation.
but I mean, look, I agree. Like, financially, it would be really stupid. But it's not going to be any different than a PC. Like, why can I buy a Vive and a Rift for my PC and just plug it in and it works?
Because someone, like, specifically made sure that stuff is built for that in Steam VR.
For Windows.
Or in Steam, no, in Steam VR. In, like, there are specifically curated platforms that deal with that. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to just not work on it for VR. Like, you can't
Like, you
just
don't
make
have to
it run
have
in
Steam
VR.
to use Oculus Rift.
No, but Oculus also has its own store and also had its own platform. You have to spend the time and money and dev energy to make them compatible with these headsets.
But you can still let them run their store on Xbox 2 or Scarlet, whatever the hell you call it. You just take a little bit of a cut every time they sell a game. Their storefront shows up there,
Well, Vive isn't even a thing though. They just make the headset. They don't have a store. They don't have a setup. They don't have anything like that. So you're talking about Valve or Oculus, and both of those companies are going to want to do their own thing.
Okay, so let's take Vive off the table. Let's just talk about Oculus.
Oculus has
why does it not work with Oculus? Why?
Because Oculus wants their own platform and own store, and their move right now is to make the system.
But you'd still have to buy their platform. You still have to buy the Rift.
But they don't want that. Oculus wants a self-contained platform. That's why they're moving towards these things that don't even need PCs. That's what Oculus's focus is now. They don't want to partner with that.
Well, they just launched Rift S on the same day they launched Quest, so they haven't given up on.
They're not giving up on it, but that's not the end goal, and it doesn't do them any favors to team up with the Xbox for that. And also, it doesn't seem like Xbox.
All they care about selling software and hardware.
No, they want you in their environment. And partnering with Xbox doesn't get you there.
But it would, though. You can just pop up their storefront on your Xbox.
It's not part of their strategy, and it's not something that Microsoft cares about, so there's no way that happens.
Well, that's really dumb on Oculus's part.
I really don't think it is.
Really, really stupid. Well, not sell your hardware and software to as many people as possible?
Well, making a whole Xbox version of the thing is just not
That's not a thing.
It is a thing. It's not as simple as you think it is.
It's really just a PC. That's all it is. That's all the next Xbox is.
There's more to it than that. Like
what?
There's a new OS. You're talking about a limitation on memory.
It's just Windows.
It's not just Windows. It's different. Like VR development is not as simple as you seem to think it is. I'm
not talking about VR development. I'm talking about it running on a PC.
I am also talking about that because to get that to even function, it has to have development in terms of the VR because everything is done through the VR headset. It's not some kind of weird plug-and-play thing like you suggest it is. It's a lot of work, and it's something that apparently Microsoft doesn't want to do. And I guess Oculus's goal here is to put you in that Facebook environment and have you owned by Facebook.
But it still happens. You still can use all the Facebook stuff on Xbox.
Yeah, but they don't want you in someone else's ecosystem. They want you in their ecosystem.
You're saying Xbox doesn't want people going to Facebook.
No, I say Facebook doesn't want you in the Xbox ecosystem.
That's crazy.
Maybe, but they've spent tons of money on Oculus to make it be that. That's their goal. That's their end goal.
You're still going to be there, though.
They don't want anyone else involved.
They're going to fail, then.
Probably.
That's idiotic. That makes no sense.
That's what Facebook's doing, though. They want it to be They want to be self-contained. They don't want to rely on anyone else.
I feel like, though, if that were the case, he probably would have said it's not even on the table because Oculus doesn't work with us, and Vive doesn't even have a platform. That's not what he said.
Well, I don't think he wants to throw other companies like that under the bus because maybe one day it will be. And then they can say, because like you say, Oculus might fail, and then maybe Oculus wants to partner, but they don't want to partner with Microsoft because that guy talked bad about them back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Microsoft should work with Rift, and
I don't think they
Rift
can.
Should work
Oculus
on Xbox.
Has no interest. I don't think Oculus has any interest in that. They want to be their own platform.
If that's the case, fair enough. If it's not the case, Microsoft is making a mistake not working with Rift. That's my opinion.
I guarantee you Oculus has no interest in it. That is not what their goal is right now.
That's really stupid.
But that's what, Facebook being stupid? Never. Look at what they're doing right now. They're run by crazy people. So
yeah, it does appear that way. For sure.
I don't disagree that it's stupid that they don't want to partner with anyone, but that is what Oculus
that's how you're going to succeed.
That's not how they think so.
Getting these people who love video games already,
they think they can do it themselves.
That's so dumb. It's dumb. You can't do anything yourself. You'll learn that very quickly if you run your own business. You need help with everything.
When your business is worth billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, it's probably pretty easy to convince yourself that you don't.
Yeah, you're right. Else. Yeah. If you could never spend the amount of money you're spending.
But even after all these years, I don't see Oculus being kind of any kind of critical mass. So,
But that's what I'm saying. This is the type of thing you need to do to get there.
But if Microsoft's not interested in supporting VR in general, Oculus partnering with them wouldn't do Oculus any good. It's not a focus, so why would you bother?
Well, it would do me good, because if you could actually get Oculus to run on the next Xbox, I don't have to buy a $1,500 PC to buy a Rift.
Well,
you're opening
that's
up.
Not what. That's not.
That's the other thing about VR.
That's not what
there's a
Oculus
major
wants to
stumbling block, though, because the average person doesn't use a PC anymore. Nobody has PCs except for you and I.
Oculus knows that.
And gamers.
That's their whole strategy, though. They want to sell things like the Quest that are self-contained.
No, I get that.
That's their idea.
Yeah, but
they don't want to have it attached to someone else's video game console.
But it's better than not having the option at all, is what I'm getting at.
Not according to them.
99% of people are never going to build a $1,500 or more PC to play VR. But if you already have this console lying around, then yeah.
But that's
then all of a
not
sudden you just have to buy the HMD, and then you're buying the game. You buy the HMD, then you're in the ecosystem. You're buying the games. Rift is making money off all of it. But
that's not what Oculus wants.
What does it want?
It wants you to buy a self-contained headset eventually. They don't want you to be attached to some other computer.
Well, nobody wants
console.
VR this wired, but let's just be honest. We're still 10 years away from.
That's not what Oculus thinks.
Really?
I think Oculus thinks the Quest is step 1 and step 2 is coming next year or the year after, and that's going to be what self-contained VR is.
I don't know if they think that. I mean,
they'd
be really stupid to think that.
I think they either think that or they think that is what they can convince the consumers of. That's what they're after. That's why those void experience places exist and all that, to kind of push you into that idea.
What are those void experiences?
Those are Oculus Quests.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
The void, it's those VR experiences, the
Never
Avengers
heard
thing.
of it.
You go in and you strap on what is effectively a QZAR vest, kind of on your thing. It's got it's like you remember those
the haptic feedback.
Yeah, the vest that punched you in the chest. And it's one of those.
Okay.
And then you put a modified Oculus Quest on. And you go in, and there's a Star Wars one, and a Ghostbusters one, and an Avengers one. And basically, you go in, it's a VR experience where you're shooting at things. But
is it laser tag, but virtual laser tag?
No, it's a VR game.
Oh, okay.
It's for 2 to 4 players. But what it is you go in this area, and everything in the area is an exact replica of what's in the VR thing. So if there's a handrail in the VR thing, you reach out, and you touch it.
Yeah.
So that's what those are. But it's Oculus Quest, powered by Oculus Quest everywhere on things.
Well, you have to, because you can't use one of those mobile HMDs.
Right. I mean, you are wearing you're wearing 15 pounds of stuff, but it is functional more or less. And that's where they want another, and it is old tech already. You put it on, it's clearly the previous version of things. You can't see anybody's face clearly. The screen door effect is massive.
Yeah.
Even by modern tech. But it's just that's where they're going. That's where they want it to be. They don't want to be attached to another console or another person,
or a
computer
PC
or anything like that. They want it to be you grab this thing, you put it on your head, and you're in Facebook. That's the goal.
I think everybody thinks that's the goal. I think realistically,
but Facebook
it's going to be a long time
right.
until.
I mean, I agree with that, but that's not what Facebook. You're never going to get Facebook to agree with that, because that's not what their corporate angle is. Like the people who think that the self-driving car is 5 years away. The self-driving car is 30 to 40 years away. But try telling Tesla that.
Yeah.
That's not what they're, it's almost a cult mentality. If you don't believe this, why are you working here, kind of thing. And I think Facebook has that same feeling towards the Oculus right now, to the point that they certainly don't feel they need anyone else, and they certainly don't feel they need Microsoft, of all people, who is sort of to a social media company going to be the epitome of old clunky tech. I don't think they have a positive view of that company in terms of just sort of what it represents to people, which I think is wrong. But I don't think that being wrong doesn't change that's how I think Facebook thinks about it.
Okay. All right. We got to move on to our last topic, which is also VR related. We've been talking about Half-Life Alyx for the last couple weeks on the show. First, it was kind of a rumor, and then last week we got the debut trailer. We were both pretty impressed with it. I think me more than you. But it looks like a lot of people were impressed with it, because the Valve Index has now sold out in North America and Canada, and is on back order, and they don't know when they're going to have more.
Well, I always said, if you want to sell VR headsets, give it an exclusive Half-Life game.
And it appears to be.
I mean, I meant Half-Life 3, but apparently this worked too.
Apparently this is good enough for a lot of people.
Just going back to Half-Life is close enough for anybody, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think this is like a flash in the pan, and that it's just X millions of numbers of Half-Life fans who are like, you know what? I've said all along, I would pay anything to play another Half-Life.
I wouldn't even say millions.
Or whatever there are, yeah.
I mean, who knows how many of these things they had.
Right.
I mean, there could be 10,000.
So that's my question. Do you think that it's a lot of people buying them, or do you think that they only had 20,000?
I think it's probably closer to the latter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot for VR.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, a lot is a is a subjective thing. Like, who knows what Valve's expectations for numbers sold of these headsets is going to be. But I mean, that is a substantial investment. These are not cheap. These are not like, Oculus Quest level pricing. This is like double that.
Oh, this is the full Monty.
Yeah.
This is
so
premium.
The fact that,
VR.
it shows the power of Half-Life of the IP, even all these, 15 years on.
It is crazy to think about.
Almost like you should have kept making them.
Yeah. Go figure.
It's like you're leaving money on the table or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't super surprise me. I'd be interested to see when they restock, because clearly they're gonna have to restock before the game comes out. They got 3.5 months.
Yeah.
4 months. So they March 20th or something like that.
4 months.
Be interested to see if they remain in stock or if they sell out again. They put more up.
They said they don't have any idea when they're gonna have more.
I believe that. I mean, I think they got to produce them. I mean,
Yeah.
I would guess you're going to get I would say maybe late February.
Because you figure they probably produce 50,000 of those for launch.
I mean, that seems like a pretty safe thing.
Yeah.
So whatever's left from that. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know what their launch numbers were, but I feel like we probably just in how manufacturing works and sort of you're running into the Chinese New Year thing. I don't know. If you're lucky, late February. Goes up and
Just in
starts
the nick of
shipping. Just in the
time.
nick of basically, you're going to come down to the wire on this thing, I think.
I mean, honestly, if they
it
were
works on
smart,
anything,
if
so.
they're smart,
Hell, this might sell some Oculuses, frankly.
they might, but think about that. If you're smart, maybe you hold it all that stock right until the end, and people are still like, "Oh my God, it's coming out in a month," and then all of a sudden you're like, "Boom! Here's 150K units, just gone, out the door."
Worked for the N64.
Right. I mean, there's a strategy and a psychology to managing your products that way.
Yeah.
And Valve's smart, as we all know. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens where it's we don't have any more, we don't have any more. And then, literally the month before Alex comes out, they're like, here they are.
Although,
And then it becomes this thing.
just the time it takes to produce something, it's going to end up like that anyway. That's just they're not going to have they're not going to do some weird sketchy we're going to hold it back and pretend there's a shortage and then here it is. That's not going to happen because this is how many weeks it takes to get something like that mass produced.
Yeah.
Especially with the holidays in place. Because the one thing you really don't want to risk is not getting these things to people after they've ordered them in time to play the game. So I don't think there'll be too much tomfoolery in that regard. I think it's just they're going to scramble. They're going to scramble to get sufficient numbers available in time for this game to come out. So the last thing you want to do is disappoint people and push them into buying the competitors' headsets.
Okay. It's time for our trailer of the week, people. Just like the rest of the game stuff this week, it was a terrible week for trailers. It's just been a terrible week. It's so weird to have the last week of November, the first week of December be so dead.
Man, that's because Thanksgiving's so late this year.
It's just crazy. It's hard to believe. But anyway, we do have one good trailer.
No reason to put anything out Black Friday week.
Yeah. So a lot of the talk in the industry is about microtransactions, DLC, season passes. It tends to get people all pissed off. And certainly Activision with Call of Duty has been guilty of those practices just as much as any other publisher. But with Call of Duty Modern Warfare, I sound like a TV commercial for some reason, all the DLC is free. Season 1 launched today, and it's all free. All new maps. Well, you'll see, because it's our trailer of the week. Let's roll it. Short and sweet, which is perfect because we are out of time. I'm glad that was only about 30 seconds long. We're not going to have a lot of time to get to questions today, unfortunately, folks. We're going to answer a couple, but we're already at the 4 o'clock mark for us here on the West Coast. We need to get out of here. Before we do answer a couple questions, as always, go at Sifted Games in the chat. We'll try to pick the two best. JReedVic7, thank you for subscribing via Twitch Prime. Texture Glitch, thank you. Chevelle Man 1979, thank you. You guys are awesome. We really appreciate it. Here's a question from JReedVic7. We haven't answered one of his for a while, actually. It seems like The Outer Worlds had and continues to be having a moment in terms of driving conversation. Why was it able to achieve this when Tomb Raider, Hitman, Deus Ex, etc. haven't been able to do it? Well, he's saying basically, what is the secret sauce with the Outer Worlds that made it resonate more than those other games?
Well, I think it's because, and I've talked about this with some other people recently about the idea of Skyrim and why Skyrim still sells and why and the answer is there is no replacement for Skyrim. Like if someone loves Skyrim,
they have to play Skyrim,
and you're like, well, what should I play if I love Skyrim? I'm like, Skyrim.
Morrowind.
Nothing else has come out since Skyrim that really scratches the same itch. But in terms of the Outer Worlds, is like, hey, have you been disappointed by Fallout 3 and 4?
Or Fallout 76?
Or certainly Fallout 76.
Yeah.
Do you miss the quality of New Vegas? Here it is. I mean, it's the closest thing. Like it's by the same people. It's by Obsidian, but like. I think it's just the fact that here's this thing that like feels like a natural continuation of what you liked about about Fallout New Vegas, and it's rough in places, and it feels like the first entry in a series for sure. But it also feels very derivative of Fallout to the point that it's kind of
looks like it,
but it's kind of like warmly familiar in that regard.
Yeah.
So I think it just strikes the right notes.
I think Obsidian was just really smart. It knows that its name has cachet with that fan base. And number two, it made the game look exactly like Fallout. Like, it made a very derivative-looking game where people,
I don't think it's derivative as Fallout 4. I think Fallout 4 is less interesting to look at.
But it's derivative of Fallout 4, though. Like, it tries to look like Fallout 4.
I don't agree with that at all.
Really?
Not at all. Because Fallout, my
can say that.
Because if I can finish my sentence, my primary memory of Fallout 4's look is gray. Like, I don't associate gray with Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds is colorful and crazy. Outer Worlds takes more from the surrounding artwork of Fallout than it does from Fallout 4.
It's a mash. That's what I was getting at, though. It's a mashup
Fallout 76 is more colorful.
Of Fallout and BioShock, and I think you have people who maybe like one of those or all of them or some of them, they look at that game and it looks like other games. It looks familiar. And you're right. It's not an exact rip of Fallout. It's not an exact rip of BioShock. It looks kind of like all those games. And I think when the layman looks at it, they're like, I recognize that. That looks familiar to me. Obsidian? Wait, they make good RPGs, right? Like, I think all of that came together to make it. And I don't even know how successful it is yet. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. We don't know how well it's sold yet.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think it catches the eye better than any of the recent Fallouts, except maybe Fallout 76. Fallout 76 is a more colorful game than 4 and 3 were. The other thing is I think it helps, and I didn't notice this until I was in a Best Buy physically this weekend. The Outer Worlds, the cover's colorful, but the Outer Worlds title on the cover is a gold foil, a raised gold foil, and for whatever reason that pops on the shelf.
It catches the light. Helps. Absolutely. Little stuff like that matters. And believe me, there's people who
package design matters.
There are people who get paid very, very well to do that stuff. Tomb Raider's 11 with RE3 remake being leaked on PSN. Oh, I didn't see that. That must have happened while we were doing the show. It raises a question of how soon this game might be coming out. Is an early 2020 or even January 2020 release date possible? Yes.
Yeah, certainly possible.
Absolutely. I mean, unlikely for January 2020 because I think they're going to want to get a little bit more pre-promotion.
Yeah, but I do feel like if you're making that, like you probably started making that as soon as you saw Resident Evil 2 was shaping up the way it was.
Oh, I think before that. I think they knew when it was shaping up.
So
when
you're still working on Resident Evil 2 and you start to see how Resident Evil 2 is
wait a
coming
minute,
together, you're like,
we got something.
Let's just in case this thing hits the way it looks like it should hit, let's just get Resident Evil 3 sort of in the pipeline. And if it doesn't work, we can kill it. But if it does hit, we got it ready to go. Because I feel like a late January sort of traditional Resident Evil release date, I can get behind that, like a yearly tradition.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's out by next March. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, I don't think this fiscal is at all unrealistic.
Me either. One more, because we got to go. Oh, Commander Fett 03. What has been your favorite publisher from the last decade?
Sony?
Sony's
first-party stuff.
Who?
If you want to go, like, outside the line, outside of first-party stuff, I would probably say Ubisoft.
That's tough. Between, Nintendo and Sony, that's a tough choice for me.
That's not a tough choice for me at all. So.
Yeah, I get that. I understand.
If you look at my top 5, it's all story-driven, cinematic, AAA experiences, pretty much. So
totally get it. For me, it's tough, though. Yeah, I guess I'd have to say Sony, PlayStation. Yeah. Even though because it's not like the gameplay sucks in those games.
No.
But you're right. They do have more of a focus on that than Nintendo's games. I think Sony's games are more well-rounded, I think is the best way to put it. And so I'd have to side with them.
Although I would really like to see if Nintendo were willing to take their output in the direction of Luigi's Mansion 3.
Right.
Because I felt like Luigi's Mansion 3, while it's still gameplay-focused, it
was inching in the right direction.
It inches in that direction of like storytelling and sort of like character animation and sort of like presentation that I feel like it felt almost Sony-ish at times in the detail and care and attention to detail they had in that game. And I'd like to see Nintendo continue to move in that direction. That would be interesting to see.
Agreed. That's it, folks. We got to go. We're already way over time. I thought the show was going to be like 90 minutes. I'm not even kidding. Like, I was like, oh my God, this show is going to be like an hour long. People are going to freak out.
Have you met us?
Yeah, we can really talk. A reminder for those of you who weren't here at the beginning of the show and you're here on the stream now, we're not 100% sure we're doing GameFace on Tuesday of next week. We're having problems finding a TriCaster TD for the show. But follow us on Twitter at SiftedGames. Follow Matt at MKyle. Follow me at Dinfire, by the way. And we'll keep you up to date on what's happening with GameFace. Also, there is a thread in our forums on sifted.net that you can follow there, and you'll always know what's going on with GameFace. We're going to try to make it happen on Tuesday. We can't promise anything. We're going to do our best. So, again, hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, healthy and happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you here maybe Tuesday, maybe not, but definitely next week. GameFace is up and out.